Chapter 205. As soon as the news of Bailey's eldest son's grand wedding was released, the media was in an uproar again. But this time, they were not targeting Bailey Han and Xia Dong. Instead, they were focusing on Su Yunxian and Mika Keto. The two of them were considered abandoned, so the media was more concerned about their attitude towards the wedding. Su Yunxian was still dreaming of making Bailey Han change his mind. She did not expect that after 3 days, Bailey Han and Xia Dong would be holding a wedding. She was so angry that she could not care less about her image in front of the servants. She smashed everything in the room that she could. But once she was in a public place, she returned to her indifferent and elegant appearance. She was high above the masses and above the common populace, as if she had never been abandoned. As for Mika Keto, he was very secretive. It was impossible for the media to take photos of him. However, the employees of Boao Group were unlucky. They acted like they were walking on thin ice. They did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of the evil god Mika Keto. Lu Xing and Jiang Dao were the first to bear the brunt of Mika Keto's cold face. The only thing they could do was to not mention anything about Xia Dong in front of him. Once, there was an insensible little brother who said, "This summer is really hot." As a result, Bai Tangshan sent a sharp glare over, and that little brother was immediately carried out by 2 of his subordinates. That painful wail caused everyone to tremble with fear. "Boss, someone is causing trouble at the East District skyscraper. They killed 2 of our underlings." Jiang Dao had something to report. He bent over and tried his best to avoid Bai Tangshan's gaze. Mika Keto's voice was cold. "Do you still need to report this to me?" Jiang Dao was sweating profusely. "We caught the troublemaker. He is an assassin." Suzaku said she saw him at the godfather's place. Mika Keto's eyes narrowed. "What did the assassin say?" "The assassin was killed before he could say anything. I suspect that it has something to do with Godfather." Mika Keto tapped her slender fingers on the table. "Why is Godfather targeting us?" "It might be because of the matter between Suzaku and White Tiger." "Didn't Suzaku and White Tiger sell him out?" Mika Keto waved her hand. "Don't jump to conclusions. Investigate the killer's background carefully. Also, investigate the Godfather's background." "Boss, the negotiation with Hanglong Group is scheduled to be held at Skyscraper. Should we change the location?" "No need. Tell Guqian to be prepared. I don't want any more accidents to happen." "Understood." Night fell. As the red light district, the streets of the East District were brightly lit and bustling. High-end luxury cars were constantly coming and going. The women in the cars were undoubtedly beautiful. 2 limited edition Maybachs slowly drove in, attracting the attention of many people on the street. The Maybach stopped at the entrance of the most luxurious entertainment club, Skyscraper. There were 2 rows of staff standing at the entrance of Skyscraper, ready to welcome the guests. The people in the first car got out first. 4 men in black suits stood beside the second car. Jiang Dao got out of the passenger seat of the second car and walked to the back seat with steady steps. He opened the door gracefully. "Boss." Mika Keto stepped out of the car. His black suit accentuated his tall figure. His nose bridge was high, his thin lips were slightly pursed, and his sharp black eyes carried a dangerous message. The sound of footsteps could be heard as he walked toward the door. The staff on both sides immediately felt a strong oppressive aura. They all held their breaths and did not dare to breathe loudly. A graceful beauty in a cheongsam greeted him. She was the boss of Skyscraper, Guqian. She smiled heartily and said, "Boss, please come in." Mika Keto was expressionless. He replied indifferently, Jiang Dao stepped forward slightly and whispered a few words in Guqian's ear. Guqian raised her delicate eyebrows slightly and then nodded. The 4 men in black behind Jiang Dao immediately rushed into Skyscraper. About 5 minutes later, the man in the lead came in front of Jiang Dao. He bowed respectfully and said in Japanese, "Hall Master, there are no suspicious people or surveillance devices inside." Jiang Dao nodded slightly and turned his gaze to Mikakito, waiting for his instructions. Boss? Mikakito did not say anything and walked straight in. As Mikakito was decisive and ruthless, he had made many enemies in a city. Even though he was in his own territory, he had to be careful. Skyscraper was Yamaguchi-gumi's property. Outsiders did not know this. Mikakito arranged for important negotiations to be held here because of this reason. Guqian followed beside him and said with a smile, "Boss, Shengguanbo is already in your VIP reception room." Mikakito replied indifferently, Shengguanbo was the CEO of Hanglong Group. He was 50 years old this year. Due to the financial crisis, his company was now in a state of loss. 2 days ago, he took the initiative to contact Mikakito to discuss the acquisition of his company. "Brother Beitang, I've been waiting for a long time." Shengguanbo saw Mikakito coming in. He stood up with a smile and stretched out his hands to greet him. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Mikakito shook his hand politely. Shengguanbo smiled and said, "I've already prepared the contract. Brother Beitang, take a look and see if there are any problems. If there are no problems, we can sign the contract today." Mikakito raised his hand and said indifferently, "Let's not talk about the contract in a hurry. I think the issue of the price still needs to be discussed." Shengguanbo was stunned. "Didn't we already set a purchase price of 1 billion? Mikakito's gaze fell on him. His deep black eyes were like a black hole, as if they were going to suck everything in. His tone was calm, but there was a sense of authority that did not allow anyone to object. "The agreed price of 1 billion is only for enterprises that can operate normally. Yesterday, I sent someone to your company to ask around and found out that 2 of your factories are only empty shells. 2 of your stores have already been sold to outsiders. You didn't mention these things in detail when you were negotiating." Shengguanbo smiled awkwardly. "It's my fault for being careless." Mikakito leaned back and said indifferently, "Given the current situation of your company, I can only invest 500 million. 500 million is too low." "I can't agree." Shengguanbo gritted his teeth. 700 million. "I can only invest 500 million. Any more than that would be a waste." Mikakito had already found out that there was a serious problem with Hanglong Group's capital chain. Otherwise, he would not have been so desperate and wanted to sell the ownership of the entire group. The 2 of them refused to give in to each other. Shengguanbo's expression turned ugly when the negotiation failed. He gritted his teeth and said, "I have to go back and discuss this with the board of directors." 3 days. "I'll only wait for 3 days." Mikakito stood up and put his hands leisurely in his trouser pockets. His expression was as indifferent as ever. "Goodbye." Shengguanbo left the lounge first and got into his Audi. Less than 5 minutes after he left, Mikakito also walked out of the lounge. Just as he walked towards the car door, something dangerous happened. More than a dozen assassins dressed in black and wearing masks suddenly appeared on the street. They all had 2 pistols in their hands and were shooting at Mikakito. "Boss, be careful." There were only 2 cars left in front of them. Everyone hid behind the cars. Screams filled the street. All kinds of men and women scattered in fear. Soon, only Mikakito's men and the crazy assassins were left. Jiang Dao quickly took out his pistol and shot at the assassins. "Boss, we'll cover you. You take the opportunity to retreat into the lounge." Mikakito's hawk-like eyes scanned the surroundings and said coldly, "It's too late. Get in the car." The assassins had already surrounded them from behind. Their only escape route was the car. The bodyguard behind Mikakito had already been shot. He urged Mikakito and the rest to leave quickly in Japanese. He clutched his chest and managed to hit 2 assassins. Then he fell to the ground and died on the spot. Mikakito glanced at his loyal men and ordered the rest to retreat. He quickly jumped into the car. The bulletproof glass temporarily blocked the bullets and the car sped off. The assassins also got into the car and chased after them. Soon, Baitangshan's two cars arrived at a deserted street. The atmosphere here was a little strange, and it was abnormally quiet. Mika Kito's heart skipped a beat and realized something was wrong. He turned the steering wheel and wanted to drive the car in another direction. Suddenly, a familiar Audi sped from that direction. He had no time to think and rushed towards the Audi. The moment he brushed past the car, the Audi suddenly swerved and blocked the middle of the road. Baitangshan slammed on the brakes, but he still hit the car. The huge impact made the people in the car suddenly fall forward. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Jiang Dao rolled up the car window and shouted at the Audi. "The car in front, get out of the way." Baitangshan saw the driver of the Audi raise his hand and press Jiang Dao down. The two of them lowered their heads together. Bang! A gunshot was heard. The bulletproof glass was almost shot through. The bullet was only 0.1 millimeters away from entering the car. Jiang Dao's heart skipped a beat. "Boss, that looks like Sheng Wanbo's car." Mika Kito said coldly, "That's right. We have fallen into a trap. Quickly inform our brothers at the headquarters to come to our rescue." The car behind them would catch up in 2 minutes. They had to leave this place quickly. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from the empty street, followed by intense gunfire. The Maybach's tires were shot and could no longer start. Mika Kito and the rest had to sneak out of the car from another direction. They retreated into the alley while defending themselves. From the gunfire, there were at least 15 people on the other side. On their side, there were only 5 survivors. There was a huge disparity in strength between the two sides. It was only a matter of time before they could not defend themselves. Suzaku did not expect to receive Jiang Dao's distress signal at this time. Moreover, the location of the incident was very close to where she was now. Attention, Shinwu 799. Chapter 206. Suzaku knew that Mika Kito was going to have a business meeting tonight, but she did not know the exact location. He would not let her know about such confidential information for the time being. She did not have a mission tonight, so she came out to relax. She went to the bar to have a few drinks, but as soon as she walked out of the bar, she received Jiang Dao's distress signal. It was 5 kilometers away from her current location. Should she go or not? Anyway, that person was so strong. If she did not go, he would not die. She'd better go home and have a beauty sleep. Suzaku got into her car and drove in the opposite direction. However, after driving for a few hundred meters, she received another distress signal. It seemed that things were getting serious. Otherwise, Jiang Dao would not have sent the signal twice. Her cold face was expressionless. Suddenly, she frowned, turned the car around and sped towards the location of the accident. Under the dim street lights, a red sports car sped towards her. When Suzaku arrived at the scene, it was a mess. Several cars were abandoned. Mika Kito's Maybach had collided with an Audi. The front of the car was dented, and there were several bloody bodies on the ground. There were no traces of living people. She frowned and looked sharply at the alley next to her. She could hear gunshots from time to time. It seemed that Mika Kito and the rest were trapped inside. She did not chase them directly. Instead, she found an entrance from another direction. She held the gun in her right hand and walked in cautiously. It was dark here, and there was a strong stench from the garbage. She frowned in disgust but did not stop. Suddenly, she kicked something and a hand grabbed her ankle. She glanced at the person at her feet coldly and aimed her gun at him. Cough, cough. It's me. The man lying on the ground lowered his voice and gasped for breath. Suzaku, the boss is in front. Go and help him. It was Jiang Dao. It sounded like he was seriously injured. Suzaku put away her gun and dragged him behind the garbage. Stay here and don't move. Suzaku walked in the alley step by step under the faint starlight. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. She quickly squatted down and hid behind a pile of garbage. Two people's voices came from the direction she came from. As the alley was very quiet, their voices were particularly clear. Did you find him? Not yet. Continue. Damn it. Jiang Dao was only 10 meters away from where they were talking. If they went a little further, they would find him. Vermilion Bird frowned and raised her pistol, intending to get rid of the two first. She placed her finger on the trigger and aimed at the target. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, a hand suddenly covered her mouth. The thick smell of blood and the unique scent of a man rushed into her nose. A low and weak voice sounded in her ear. Don't act rashly. Seeing that it was Beitang Shen, she was pleasantly surprised. The sound of a gunshot would definitely attract other killers. But if she didn't shoot, Jiang Dao would be discovered. A hand slid towards her calf. His palm was sticky and might be bloodstains. Suzaku didn't know what he wanted to do. She frowned and was about to make a move. Unexpectedly, his hand pulled out the dagger she had hidden in her leather boot. He put the dagger in her hand and replaced the gun. He lowered his voice and said, "You're in charge of the one on the left." She nodded slightly. He took his hand away from her mouth. The two of them walked side by side and got closer to Jiang Dao. Suzaku held the dagger tightly. Her eyes flashed and the dagger was already stabbing towards the heart of the person on the left. At the same time, another dagger brushed past her right. With a whistling sound, it pierced towards the heart of the person on the right. With two loud bangs, the two men fell to the ground without even making a sound. There are 5 people left. Mika Kito was almost whispering into her ear. When he breathed, his warm breath brushed past her earlobe. She felt a little uncomfortable. She lowered her voice. What about us? The 3 of us. His words were concise and to the point. Suzaku understood what he meant. The only people left alive were Jiang Dao, and herself. His clothes were soaked in liquid, and through his clothes, it seeped onto her body. The strong smell of blood assailed her nose. She frowned. You're injured. Can you walk? Yes. He breathed heavily. Take the back. Take Jiang Dao. Jiang Dao's injuries were worse than Mika Kito's. When they reached him, he was already unconscious. Blood kept flowing out of his chest. Suzaku didn't say a word. She bent down and carried Jiang Dao on her back. She said in a low voice, "My car is parked at the entrance in front. Can you hold on?" Mika Kito grunted in a nasal voice. He followed behind her with heavy steps. Blood flowed down his fingers and dripped onto the ground. As they walked, the blood flowed along the road. When they arrived at the parking lot, someone ran out of the alley. Vermilion Bird supported Jiang Dao with one hand and raised the gun with the other to aim. With a bang, the man was killed. Quick, they're in front. Suddenly, there was a scream. Another battle was about to begin. Suzaku threw Jiang Dao into the back seat. She hid behind Maybach and shot at the enemy. She said calmly, "Mika Kito, you go first." Mika Kito's gun had run out of bullets. He took the gun out of Jiang Dao's arms and said coldly, "I'll never leave a woman behind and run for my life." At this moment, 2 cars sped towards them. As they drove, the people inside fired at the killers. Their men had arrived. Their firepower was reversed, and they quickly eliminated the remaining 4 assassins. One of Mika Kito's men rushed over and supported him. "Boss, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Beitang Shen clutched his chest as fresh blood gushed out once again. He whispered a few words to his subordinates before his breathing became heavy as if he was about to suffocate. "Stop talking. Call the doctor." Suzaku jumped into the car and started the engine. Mika Kito sat in the back seat and soon lost consciousness. They rushed back to Mika Kito's villa. The doctor had already received the news and was ready for the operation. Several of his men carried the unconscious Mika Kito and Jiang Dao into the operating room. 2 doctors operated on them at the same time. 2 hours later, the operation was over. The doctor said that the operation was a success. Mika Kito and Jiang Dao were out of danger. Jiang Dao was shot 3 times. One of the bullets pierced his lung by 1 centimeter. Mika Kito was shot twice. His chest and back were injured. Fortunately, his vital organs were not injured. After the operation, Suzaku did not need to stay. She greeted him coldly and was about to leave when one of his men ran over and said, "Suzaku, boss is awake. He has something to tell you." Suzaku raised her eyebrows. This man was really strong. He woke up so quickly even though he was severely injured. Mika Kito was lying on the bed. His face was pale, but it did not affect his handsomeness. His eyes were as sharp and gloomy as usual. He had a high nose bridge and was as handsome as a god. When he saw her enter, his thin lips moved and his voice was hoarse. "Thank you for today." Suzaku did not expect him to thank her. She was stunned. She smiled and said calmly, "You're too polite. It's only right that I work for you." There was no emotion in his deep eyes. "I asked someone to take down the faces of those killers. Take a look and see if you know them." "Okay. Have a good rest." Suzaku really admired him. Even though he was injured, he was still so meticulous. He had arranged everything so neatly. Lu Xing brought the vermilion bird to a room and took out a stack of photos for her. She explained, "These are the photos that the boss ordered his men to take. These are the appearances of the assassins." He deliberately pulled out a photo from the stack of photos and placed it in front of Vermilion Bird. "This man disguised himself as Shengguan Bo tonight and set up this trap," he said. It turned out that the Shengguan Bo who negotiated with Mika Kito was not the real Shengguan Bo, but an assassin in disguise. They ambushed Mika Kito on the street and forced Mika Kito to drive away. Then, the fake Shengguan Bo intercepted them. If Suzaku had not arrived in time, it was hard to predict what would have happened. The person in the photo was already dead. His eyes were closed and the blood on his face had probably been wiped clean by the man who took the photo. Suzaku carefully identified it for a while and said, "I've seen this person before at Godfather's bar." She picked up the rest of the photos and carefully identified them one by one. These people were all unfamiliar and she did not recognize any of them. She thought for a while and said, "White Tiger has more connections than me. Lu Xing, I suggest you send these photos to Japan and let White Tiger recognize them." Lu Xing nodded expressionlessly and immediately got someone to fax all the photos to Japan for White Tiger to recognize. Suzaku stretched and wanted to leave. Lu Xing stretched out his right arm and stopped her. He said indifferently, "Suzaku, you'll stay here tonight." She was surprised. "Why?" "Boss instructed me." Lu Xing thought for a while and said seriously, "It's so late. Maybe boss is worried that it's not safe for you to go home." Suzaku's facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. "Lu Xing, don't guess what boss means. Do you think I'm the kind of woman who's not safe? If anyone dared to do anything to her, it would be strange if she did not skin them alive." Lu Xing looked her up and down. She was wearing a black leather skirt and a pair of black leather boots. She was sexy and charming. If she walked out, she would definitely attract bees and butterflies. He said indifferently, "It's not safe." Suzaku rolled her eyes. The men in Yamaguchi-gumi were all chauvinistic. Even though they were all assassins, they still showed their distrust of a woman's strength from time to time. Did they really think that she was the kind of delicate miss who could not even truss a chicken? She patted his shoulder. "I appreciate boss's good intentions. It's still more comfortable to sleep in my own bed. I'll go back first. You should rest early too." Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 207. Mika Kito's physical fitness was very good, and his willpower was strong. The next day, he insisted on getting out of bed. Jiang Dao was a little unluckier than him. Because his injuries were more serious than his, he had to lie in bed for a few days to recuperate. In this assassination attempt, the Sanka group had sacrificed 5 of their subordinates. This could be said to have angered Bai Tangshen. His entire body was emitting a ruthless aura as he issued a death order to find out who the mastermind was. A second ago, Bai Tangshen's entire body was still emitting cold air. In the next moment, he received a phone call, and the corners of his lips immediately hooked up into a warm smile. Lu Xing, Vermilion Bird, and the others very tactfully retreated quietly. It was definitely a call from one of the 2 little fellows. They guessed right. The call was from Xiao Guai. Her soft and tender voice reached Mika Kito's ear. "Uncle Shen, when are you coming back? I miss you so much." Mika Kito looked at the wounds on his body and smiled bitterly. "Gigai, Uncle Shen will be back in a few days." "Oh." Xiao Guai's disappointed voice dragged out. "Then, Uncle Shen, we've already moved. Will you still come to see me?" "Yes, Uncle Shen will definitely come to see you. Uncle Shen, Mommy and Daddy are getting married. They're going to Greece for their honeymoon. I want to go with Uncle Shen." Mika Kito clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were deep and cold. He didn't want to know anything related to her. However, in the face of the naive Xiao Guai, he couldn't lose his temper. He tried his best to say in a gentle tone, "Okay, when Gigai grows up, Uncle Shen will take you wherever you want to go." "Really?" Xiao Guai smiled happily. "Then let's pinky swear." "Uncle Shen, you're not allowed to be a scalper." "Okay, let's pinky swear." "Ah, Uncle Shen, someone's knocking on the door. I have to hang up. Bye." Xiao Guai hurriedly hung up the phone. She thought it was one of the servants, but she didn't expect it to be Xiao Bao. Xiao Guai patted her chest and stuck out her tongue cutely. "Brother, you scared me to death. Gigai, did you do something bad? Otherwise, why would you be afraid?" Xiao Bao snickered and sat beside Xiao Guai. "I didn't." Xiao Guai pouted, her big eyes blinking. "I missed Uncle Shen, so I called him secretly." Xiao Bao blinked. "I guessed it a long time ago. You're still holding the phone in your arms. You must have just hung up. What did Uncle Shen say?" Xiao Guai said honestly, "Uncle Shen said that he would only be back in a few days." Xiao Bao blinked. He had already known from the newspaper that Uncle Shen had returned to China. Only the silly girl was still in the dark. Forget it, it was better not to tell her the truth, lest she be sad. There was news from Japan. After White Tiger identified the photo, he confirmed that the man who had disguised himself as Shengguan Bo was a killer who had a good relationship with his godfather. His nickname was Scorpion. As for the other dozen or so people, the White Tiger recognized 2 of them. They had both made deals with his godfather before. Suzaku's eyes darkened. It seems that this case was handled by his godfather. The employer paid a high price to arrange so many killers to complete the task at once. Mika Kito glanced at her coldly with displeasure. He was about to be hacked to death, but she cared about how much the employer paid. Suzaku naturally felt the murderous aura from him. She smiled and said lightly, "Boss, how many people know that you had a business deal with Shengguan Bo in Earthly Paradise?" Mika Kito also thought of this. From his point of view, only Jiang Dao, as his assistant, knew who he was doing business with and where. He would never betray him. Then, if the news was leaked, the problem must be with Shengguan Bo. "Suzaku, contact Shengguan Bo. I want to meet him as soon as possible." Now that Jiang Dao was injured and recuperating, Suzaku had temporarily replaced Jiang Dao and was promoted to his assistant. Suzaku glanced at the injuries on his body and said lightly, "The doctor asked you to rest quietly." He frowned. "I know my own body. I don't need to rest quietly." "Okay then, I said too much." She shrugged with an indifferent expression. Suzaku went out and dialed the number of Shengguan Bo's secretary. When she heard that Mika Keto wanted to meet their president, the secretary apologized profusely and said that their president did not come to the office this morning. Then she gave Suzaku a cell phone number and said that it was Sheng Wanbo's private number. Suzaku then called Sheng Wanbo's cell phone. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, the call was transferred to the landline of Sheng Wanbo's main residence. The servant said that their master had not come home since yesterday and that their wife had called the police. Suzaku frowned and reported Sheng Wanbo's situation to Mika Keto. Something must have happened to Sheng Wanbo. Mika Keto's slender fingers tapped on the table and analyzed calmly. The Audi that the killer drove here is Sheng Wanbo's car. It's very likely that he kidnapped Sheng Wanbo. It's said that the police haven't found Sheng Wanbo's whereabouts yet. I'm guessing that he has been killed. Mika Keto said in a low voice. The other party thinks that we won't be able to find any clues once Sheng Wanbo is dead. Then they underestimate me, Mika Keto. Suzaku, send someone to investigate the people who have been in contact with Sheng Wanbo these 2 days. Understood. In the afternoon, news came from the police station that Sheng Wanbo's body had been fished out of the river. There were strangulation marks on his neck, and he had died of suffocation. The time of death was estimated to be between 7 and 9 o'clock last night. This was the time when Sheng Wanbo drove to earthly paradise. It seemed that the killer had already known the time and place of the negotiation between Sheng Wanbo and Mika Keto, and had killed Sheng Wanbo on his way to the negotiation. After dumping his body, the killer had disguised himself as Sheng Wanbo and lured Mika Keto into a trap. Suzaku took advantage of her advantage as a woman and pretended to be a policewoman. She went to Sheng Wanbo's house to investigate the situation and try to find out information related to the killer. Suzaku pushed the flat glasses on the bridge of her nose and said seriously, Mrs. Shengwan, please carefully recall who Mr. Shengwan had a feud with when he was alive. Mrs. Shengwan covered her mouth and sobbed. My husband had offended many people in the business world when he was alive, but those people didn't have to kill my husband over such a trivial matter, did they? Mrs. Shengwan, we can't let go of any clues. Please cooperate with us to find the real killer as soon as possible and comfort Mr. Shengwan's soul in heaven. Mrs. Shengwan stopped sobbing and carefully recalled more than a dozen names, all of which were people who had disputes with Sheng Wanbo. Suzaku asked, Mrs. Shengwan, did Mr. Shengwan do anything special in the past few days? Mrs. Shengwan thought carefully and said, my husband has been in a bad mood for the past 2 months because of the company's asset crisis. About 3 or 4 days ago, he suddenly came home in high spirits, saying that he had found a way to solve the company's crisis. Zhu Kei secretly speculated in her heart. 3 or 4 days ago, Sheng Wanbo took the initiative to contact Beitang Shen and proposed to sell Henglong Group. Did he say what the solution was? Mrs. Shengwan shook her head. He rarely tells me about the company, but that night, I heard him talking to someone on the phone in the study. It seemed that he wanted to cooperate with the Boao group, but I didn't hear the details clearly. Suzaku asked a few more questions and then got a copy of Sheng Wanbo's call records from the phone company. After careful comparison, Mrs. Shengwan pointed out a time point. Suzaku checked the phone number of the call with Sheng Wanbo at that time and finally found that the owner of this phone number was Shengwan Ao. Shengwan Ao is Sheng Wanbo's younger brother. He's also the second young master of the Shengwan family who isn't well liked. It's said that he was the son of Master Shengwan and a bar girl. After he turned 18, he ran away from home and never contacted the Shengwan family again. Suzaku reported the information to Mika Keto. The night before Sheng Wanbo decided to sell Henglong Group, he talked to Shengwan Ao on the phone in the study. I suspect that Shengwan Ao suggested him to do so. According to Mrs. Shengwan, Sheng Wanbo had been worried about it for a month or 2. How could it be so coincidental that after Sheng Wanbo came up with a solution, he called Shengwan Ao, whom he had not contacted for decades, and the two of them happily discussed the details of the cooperation plan. Suzaku continued, I checked Master Shengwan's will. The will said that all the shares of Henglong Group will be inherited by Sheng Wanbo. If something happens to Sheng Wanbo, then Shengwan Ao will inherit it. So, Shengwan Ao also has a motive. Mika Kito's deep eyes stared at her without blinking. You suspect that Shangguan Ao killed two birds with one stone. He killed Shangguan Bo, took the family property, and led me into a trap. Suzaku nodded calmly. I have this suspicion, but what I don't understand is, when did you have a grudge with Shangguan Ao? Why did he want to harm you? Mika Kito leaned back in the chair, exuding a domineering aura. Do you have a photo of Shangguan Ao? Unfortunately, I haven't found it yet. It seems that the Shangguan family doesn't just hate him. There isn't even a photo of him in the house. Mika Kito flipped through the information about Shangguan Ao and pondered for a moment. Didn't he graduate from the National High School? If I remember correctly, every batch of graduates would take a group photo. Suzaku's eyes lit up, and her beautiful eyes flashed with a passionate light. This was indeed a good starting point. The National High School's archive room did indeed have the photos of that batch of graduates. Suzaku compared the names on the back of the photo with the small profile picture on the photo, and finally found Shangguan Ao's profile picture. He was a teenager of 17 or 18 years old. He was very handsome, but the expression on his face was unruly. Just by looking at his expression and actions, one could tell that he was a delinquent. I don't know this person. Mika Kito only took one look at the photo of Shangguan Ao when he was young, and she was sure that she had never seen him before, let alone have a grudge with him. Awesome novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 208. Suzaku thought for a while and said, why don't I post this photo online and ask my friends to identify him? Be careful not to alert the enemy. I'll find some trustworthy people. I'll leave this matter to you. Report to me if there's any progress. Ever since the assassination, Mika Kito's attitude towards her had become kinder. Moreover, she had done a good job in this investigation, so his trust in her had increased. Understood. Suzaku nodded and turned to walk to the door. Mika Kito's voice came from behind. Suzaku, release the news that I'm seriously injured and still in the emergency room. Are you sure you want to use yourself as bait? Suzaku raised her eyebrows. She knew that he wanted to release the news to lure out the person who wanted to kill him. Since the other party wanted to kill him, if he was seriously injured and not dead, the other party would most likely attack again. Mika Kito said indifferently, how can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Not only will I release the news, but I'll also make it seem like I'm in the emergency room in the hospital and relax the security of the hospital. Are you sure the other party will attack again? Suzaku crossed her arms. I'm not sure, but if I want to kill someone, I'll definitely have a backup plan. He was only speculating from his perspective. Okay, I'll arrange it. Immediately, the news that Mika Kito was seriously injured and hospitalized spread through the streets. However, it was not reported how he was injured or which hospital he was in. Xia Dong also knew that Mika Kito was injured and was very worried. She wanted to see him, but she didn't know which hospital he was in, so she could only call Jiang Dao. Jiang Dao glanced at Mika Kito, who was lying on the hospital bed pretending to be seriously injured. His handsome face was as cold as the Antarctic iceberg. Under the old man's cold gaze, he could only say against his will, Miss Xia, our boss doesn't want to see you for the time being. Xia Dong bit her lip. I just want to know if he's seriously injured. Jiang Dao glanced at his boss again. Under his boss's gaze, he replied, boss is seriously injured. He's already unconscious. However, his life is not in danger. Xia Dong's heart skipped a beat, and she said nervously, Jiang Dao, please tell me which hospital he's staying in. Since he's unconscious now, he definitely won't know that I went to see him. As long as you don't tell him, he won't know. Jiang Dao, just tell me. What should he do? What a headache. Jiang Dao looked at Mika Kito questioningly. Mika Kito had set this trap to lure the people who wanted to harm him. What if Xia Dong also came and got into an accident? He shook his head resolutely. Jiang Dao coughed and said, I'm sorry, Miss Xia. I can't tell you. I still have something to do, so I'll hang up first. Before Xia Dong could coax him again, Jiang Dao hung up the phone impatiently. Xia Dong then called Lu Xing and Suzaku. She wanted to dig out information about the hospital Mika Keto was staying in from them. It was as if their mouths were glued with superglue. No matter how hard she tried, they wouldn't say a word. In the end, she could only give up. Her heart was filled with worry. It was difficult for Xia Dong to find out which hospital Mika Keto was staying in. However, it was a piece of cake for her godfather. He soon got the answer. Mika Keto was staying in the hospital where Su Xingchen was staying. This world was really strange. After burning the piece of paper in his hand, the godfather's lips curled into a mocking smile. Since Beitangshen had caused Xingchen to suffer so miserably, Xingchen might as well let him be executed by Xingchen. Late at night, there was no one in the hospital corridor. Suddenly, the elevator door opened, and a man wearing a black windbreaker and sunglasses walked out of the elevator. His crisp footsteps left an empty echo in the corridor. He stopped at the door of the VIP ward. His right hand, which was wearing a black glove, held the doorknob. He slowly opened the door and walked into the ward. At the same time, in a monitoring room, a handsome young man with dyed blonde hair was staring intently at the monitor screen. Seeing the black-clothed man appear and enter Su Xingchen's room, he immediately woke up his companion who was lying on the side. Gang Zi, quickly take a look. Could this man be Godfather? Gang Zi was still in a daze. When he heard the Godfather's name, he immediately jumped up and shouted excitedly. What? Godfather? That bastard finally appeared. The blonde guy was also very excited. That's right. Brother who asked us to monitor Su Xingchen's ward so that we can catch the Godfather. We have been monitoring him for a few days. He finally appeared. Gungzi patted his head. Don't get too excited. Although this guy is dressed in black and doesn't look like a good person, we can't be sure that he is the Godfather. Let's get a few photos first. Oh, and activate the camera in Su Xingchen's ward. The blonde guy's hands did not stop moving as he sighed. Gungzi, luckily we sneaked into Su Xingchen's ward and installed a pinhole camera. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see the Godfather's face. When he enters the ward, he should take off his sunglasses. The monitor screen changed and showed the situation in Su Xingchen's ward. The man in the trench coat took off his sunglasses, revealing a handsome face. It was the Godfather. Godfather, why are you here? Su Xingchen saw him and quickly covered her face. The gauze on her face had been removed. Although it was not as scary as before, she still did not dare to show her face to others. The Godfather was not in a hurry to answer her question. Instead, he placed his hand on the back of her hand. Xingchen, what are you doing? Take your hand off. Be careful not to touch your wound. Su Xingchen shook her head. I won't take it off. My current appearance is so ugly that even I am afraid of myself. I don't want you to dislike me. The Godfather sat beside her and patted her shoulder. His eyes were filled with love. You are speaking nonsense again. I am your Godfather. Why would I care about these things? No matter how he comforted her, Su Xingchen refused to take her hand off. He had no choice but to give up. Xingchen, I am here to tell you that I have started to make a move on Mika Keto. He is seriously injured and hospitalized. This is the best opportunity to kill him. Not only did Beitangshen cause her to lose her reputation, but he also indirectly caused her to be disfigured. She hated him to the bone. When Su Xingchen heard that Beitangshen was injured and hospitalized, he couldn't wait to set off firecrackers to celebrate. However, although she was happy, she did not lose her rationality. She thought for a moment and asked, Godfather, when you made a move last time, did you alert the enemy? What if Mika Keto deliberately set a trap for you? The Godfather smiled with appreciation. Xingchen, it is rare for you to think of this. However, I have carefully investigated the situation. Mika Keto was seriously injured that night and was sent to his own villa. He was only sent to the hospital the next day. I also checked the doctor who operated on him and confirmed that he was sent to the hospital because his condition worsened. Otherwise, how could a person like him be hospitalized? People in the underworld were vigilant and did not want to expose themselves to the public. Then there must be a lot of guards around him. Godfather, how do you plan to get close to him? The godfather patted her head and smiled gently. We don't have to worry about this. Money can make the devil turn millstones. If I give enough money, someone will naturally help me. Baby, I will let you see Mika Kito's tragic death as soon as possible. He was smiling gently, but his words were cruel and cold. Godfather, you are amazing. Su Xingqian was so happy that she forgot to cover her face. She happily hugged his waist. The godfather looked down at her miserable face. There was no fear or disgust on his face. Instead, there was a bit of pity on his face. He hugged her tightly and gently patted her shoulder. They chatted for a while more before the godfather told her to rest and left the ward. Gengzi hurriedly spoke into the headset. Old Xia, that black-clothed man walked out of Su Xingqian's room and is now walking towards the elevator. When he walks out of the hospital, you must follow him, don't lose him. A deep man's voice came from the earpiece. Got it. The blonde said, Gengzi, we should report this to Brother Hu quickly. Okay, I will tell Brother Hu. You go to sleep first. Gengzi reported the incident with the man in black to Ahu and sent him a photo. 10 minutes later, Bailey Han, who was sleeping comfortably with Xia Dong in his arms, was woken up by Ahu's call. He glanced at Xia Dong, who was curled up in a ball, quietly got up, and walked to the balcony to answer the call. When he ended the call and returned to the room, Xia Dong sat in the middle of the bed with her hands hugging her knees. She was at a loss as tears streamed down her face. Her eyes were sad and lost, like a puppy that had been abandoned by its owner. Bailey Han's heart ached. He went forward and hugged her tightly. He kissed her hair and said gently, Honey, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? She reached out her hands and hugged him carefully. She sobbed softly. I dreamt that you were gone. When I woke up, I realized that you were really gone. I was so sad. I thought you didn't want me anymore. Bailey Han's chest ached. He gently kissed the tears on her face and said softly, Silly, why would I not want you anymore? I just went out to answer the call. I was afraid that I would wake you up. Her panicked heart gradually calmed down. She lowered her head in embarrassment and avoided his burning gaze. She said softly, I had a nightmare. That's why I cried. His cute wife was shy. Bailey Han kissed her red ear and chuckled. I know. Honey, I'm very happy. He was very happy. She was just like him, afraid of losing each other. Xia Dong felt that his laughter carried a hint of smugness. She snorted softly and turned her head away awkwardly, ignoring him. Bailey Han finally knew where Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi's awkward personalities came from. He couldn't help but smile dotingly. He carried her to the bed and held her in his arms. His heart was filled with her. Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 209. Bailey Han sent the photo that Ahu had sent him late last night to Mika Kito's phone. There was a line of text below it. He is Su Xingqian's godfather. He is plotting against you. After Mika Kito received the text, she immediately called him back. Her voice was cold. Why are you helping me? Bailey Han glanced at the living room. Xia Dong was helping Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi pack their school bags. He said calmly, if something happens to you, she will be sad. I'm not helping you. I just don't want her to be sad. There was no response from the other end of the phone for a long time. After a long time, Mika Kito's deep voice came through. Is the news accurate? Bailey Han frowned. He didn't want to have too much to do with Mika Kito, but now that they were facing the same enemy, he might as well make things clear. He lowered his voice and briefly explained how he and Xia Dong were surrounded by fake reporters. He also pointed out his own suspicions. I suspect that Godfather and Su Xingchen have a close relationship. The man in black in the photo is very likely Godfather. Xia Dong and the two little guys were ready to go out. Bailey Han ended the call and walked over to them. He chuckled. Honey, I'll go with you today. That's great. The two little guys were very happy. This was the first time their father had sent them to school since the new semester started. Bailey Han walked them to the entrance of the kindergarten. He stood side by side with Xia Dong and watched them enter. Then, he put his arm around Xia Dong's shoulder and said with a smile, "What do we do now?" Xia Dong was curious. What do you mean? Aren't you going to the office? Who said I'm going to the office? Bailey Han hugged her hand tightly. I skipped work today to accompany my wife. Xia Dong saw that everyone was looking at her. She poked his arm embarrassedly and whispered, so many people are looking. Let go. You are my wife. They like to look. Let them look. Bailey Han was not ashamed. Instead, he was proud and even raised his head proudly. Let's hurry up and get in the car. Xia Dong was afraid that he would do something worse, so she dragged his arm into the car. Hubby, is it okay if you don't go to the office today? Bailey Han was helpless and patted her head. Honey, do you want your husband to become a workaholic? It's not that. I just think that work is very important. You don't have to waste time with me. Bailey Han looked at her seriously. Accompanying you is the most important thing. How is it a waste of time? Xia Dong held his face with both hands and said seriously, Hubby, you're so strange today. Why are you suddenly so good at talking? Did you hit your head when you went out this morning? Bailey Han's face darkened. Honey, don't be such a killjoy, okay? Didn't Encyclopedia of Women's Lives say that women like to hear sweet words? He had already thrown away his pride. Why was his wife still so hard to please? Xia Dong chuckled. Sure enough, this kind of expression was more suitable for him. Bailey Han's face darkened. Xia Dong did not expect Bailey Han to bring her to Anson's office. Before entering, she grabbed his arm and whispered, Why are we here? Is there a banquet event to attend? He smiled mysteriously. You'll know the answer soon. Seeing them appear, Anson's handsome face immediately broke into a smile. Look at you two being so sweet. I'm so envious. Xia Dong was a little embarrassed. She wanted to pull her hand out of Bailey Han's arm, but he held it tightly. He said calmly, Anson, have you prepared the things I asked you to prepare? They've been ready for a long time. We're just waiting for you to inspect them. Anson snapped his fingers, and his two assistants came out of the dressing room, each holding 2 wedding dresses. They unfolded the wedding dresses one by one and displayed them in front of Xia Dong. They smiled politely and said, Mrs. Bailey, which one would you like to try first? Xia Dong looked at the calm Bailey Han and then at the smiling Anson. She pointed at her nose and asked, Did you prepare all these for me? Anson winked and smiled. That's right. Last time, when young master brought you to the press conference, he asked me to take your measurements. Then, he contacted a French designer to change the measurements of the wedding dress that had already been designed. What do you think? Are you touched? Xia Dong keenly grasped another piece of information. What do you mean by a wedding dress that was designed long ago? Bailey Han suddenly emitted a cold aura. He stared at Anson with a murderous look in his sharp eyes. I dare you to say it. Anson shrugged, revealing a fearful expression. I'd better not say it, lest eldest young master gets angry out of humiliation and strikes me with his palm. Xia Dong looked at Bailey Han and suddenly stood in front of him. She raised her chin proudly and said righteously, Anson, don't be afraid. Say it boldly. If Han hits you, I'll block him for you. Anson raised his eyebrows provocatively at Bailey Han. Bailey Han glared back at him. Anson immediately looked scared. I'd better not say it, alright, Ahan. Don't scare Anson. Although Xia Dong couldn't see Bailey Han's expression behind her, she could imagine that he was threatening someone. Bailey Han's face darkened. This little fool. Could it be that she couldn't tell that Anson was deliberately toying with the two of them? She was actually speaking up for that bastard. He was so angry. Anson saw that the time was right and didn't dare to continue playing. If he really angered young master, he wouldn't have a good ending. He rubbed his chin and smiled mischievously. Mrs. Bailey, I actually started designing these wedding dresses after Ah Yun went to America. Xia Dong turned her head stiffly and stared at Bailey Han strangely. You didn't design these wedding dresses for Su Yunxian to wear, did you? Bailey Han was about to die from anger. His face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. He knocked her forehead in annoyance. What nonsense are you thinking? Of course these were designed for you. She harumphed. I don't believe it. Were you sure that I would marry you from that time? When Bailey Yun had just left the country, although he had confessed to her in a hazy manner, she had rejected him. How could he have come up with such a strange idea to pre-order the wedding dresses? Bailey Han's eyes swept across the room and chased away the irrelevant people. Then, under her relentless questioning, his old face turned slightly red again. He gritted his teeth to hide his embarrassment and announced domineeringly, I said before that I won't let go. Anyway, you'll be mine sooner or later. There's nothing wrong with designing the wedding dress in advance. It seemed that ever since they got married, she rarely saw him get angry out of embarrassment. She raised her eyebrows and deliberately provoked him. I still don't believe it. These wedding dresses must have been designed for Su Yunxian. Otherwise, why would you change the size? He held her shoulder with one hand and her abdomen with the other. His voice suddenly became gentle. Little fool, the baby is growing up day by day. Shouldn't you change the size to give him enough space? Although she had already guessed that this was the reason, Xia Dong was still very touched to hear him say it personally. He seemed to be constantly bringing her surprises, letting her see his love and consideration for her. She wrapped her arms around his waist and hugged him gently. She said softly, Thank you, hubby. Silly. Bailey Han's eyes were filled with smiles as he kissed her forehead gently. With the help of the two female assistants, Xia Dong tried on 2 sets of wedding dresses. After putting them on, she found that they were beautiful and fit her well, especially her abdomen. There was no sense of restraint. She couldn't make up her mind, so she asked Bailey Han to help her choose. Bailey Han pointed to one of the dresses and said, I choose this one. Xia Dong raised her eyebrows and smiled. I knew you would choose this one. Of the 2 wedding dresses, one was low-cut and backless, while the other was slightly more conservative. There was no doubt that Bailey Han had chosen the slightly more conservative one. Anson held his forehead and looked as if he couldn't bear to watch. Mrs. Bailey, you shouldn't have put the decision in Ahan's hands. Xia Dong hugged Bailey Han's arm and smiled happily. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I've already decided to only wear conservative clothes outside in the future. She didn't want someone to get jealous and smell sour. Do you have to be like this? It's not nice to show off your love in front of a single person. Anson's face was full of tears. He was being bullied by this couple. Bailey Han completely ignored him. He held Xia Dong's waist with one hand and asked about her well-being, afraid that she would be tired. That meticulous and considerate appearance of a good husband instantly killed the 2 assistants. They couldn't help but place their hands on their chests, and their eyes were full of hearts. If she were to marry, she would marry a good husband like Bailey Han. After ordering the wedding dress, Bailey Han drove Xia Dong to the entrance of the cinema. The luxury car drove into the parking lot below the cinema, attracting a lot of attention. Bailey Han wanted to book a couple seat in the private room, but Xia Dong didn't agree. Watching a movie was like watching a big theater. If the 2 of them were to watch a movie in a small private room, they might as well go home and watch a home theater. The facilities were more comfortable than a cinema. So he accommodated her and bought 2 tickets for a comedy movie. Xia Dong saw the fragrant popcorn and couldn't help but buy a big bucket. So Bailey Han held the popcorn in one hand and Xia Dong's hand in the other and found a seat in the front row. Bailey Han sat in the dark cinema, holding Xia Dong's hand and listening to her crisp laughter from time to time. The corners of his lips were curved up. It was the first time he was watching a movie with his lover in a cinema. It was a wonderful feeling. He didn't care about the plot of the movie at all. He only cared about her mood. He suddenly leaned over to her cheek and stole a kiss. When she turned around to look at him, he whispered into her ear, "Honey, I love you." Ad Songshu 566. Chapter 210. She glanced around guiltily. Seeing that everyone else was focused on the movie, she secretly kissed him on the lips and whispered, "Hubby, I love you too." He nibbled on her ear and chuckled. "Right now, we're like students who are dating behind their parents' backs. Now that you mention it, it seems like we haven't been in a relationship before we got married. It's all your fault." Xia Dong pinched his arm to express her dissatisfaction. "Dating, getting married, and having children. We're just reversing the order of normal people." He wasn't ashamed of it. Instead, he was proud of it. He raised his eyebrows proudly. "We'll get married first, then date. I can give you any kind of dating method you want." "Whoa, you make it sound so good." Xia Dong's attention was no longer on the movie. She started whispering to him in the movie theater. "Then when I get home tonight, I'll write a complete dating plan. You have to show me the ways of dating in the book." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Ahem. The people in the front row couldn't help but cough. It was true that the couple in the back row was very sweet, but it was their fault for showing off their sweetness in a public place like the movie theater. Xia Dong's cheeks were burning. She whispered, "Sorry." Then, she glared at Bailey Han. That guy actually had a calm expression on his face. It was as if he wasn't the one who did something as uncultured as whispering in the movie theater. As the wedding approached, Bailey Han and Xia Dong's relationship grew closer. Although Xia Dong didn't write a complete dating plan, he still used all the romantic cells in his body to give her a new dating experience from time to time. For example, he would give her a red rose with dew on it the moment she opened her eyes in the morning. He would ride his bicycle on a windy evening to watch the sunset on the boulevard. He would call her suddenly at work to tell her that he missed her very much, even though they had just parted ways in the morning. She was very curious and asked him why he suddenly became so romantic. He said, "Wifey, it's because I'm learning to love you better." He hadn't read those books for nothing. He loved her, and it wasn't just for show. He wanted to give her happiness. Xia Dong felt that she was very happy. However, she did not forget that there was a foreign object in his brain that could shatter their happiness at any time. There was always a corner of her heart that was filled with worry. Xia Dong was happy and worried at the same time. Asterisk in Mika Kito's VIP ward, a doctor and a nurse knocked on the door and walked in. The doctor said, "Routine check." Lu Xing, who was guarding the ward, nodded expressionlessly. The head of the person on the hospital bed was wrapped in gauze. His eyes were closed, and an oxygen tube was inserted into his nose. He was lying in a pile of instruments. The doctor carefully examined the patient's injuries while the nurse held a fountain pen in her hand and carefully recorded the situation. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door of the ward. Lu Xing went forward to open the door. Unexpectedly, there was a sudden pain in the back of his neck and his head was dizzy. He forced himself to turn around and saw that the beautiful nurse was pointing the fountain pen in her hand at his direction. He was shocked. That wasn't a fountain pen at all, but a hidden weapon that could shoot extremely thin silver needles. They are assassins. He gritted his teeth and strode forward. He wanted to fight them, but another silver needle shot out. His body was completely limp, and he had no strength to dodge it. The silver needle pierced his chest, and the strong dizziness made him unable to support himself. He fell to the ground with a thud. The male assassin said in a low voice, go and open the door. Okay. The female assassin turned to open the door. Outside the door was the person who was waiting for them. The male assassin took out a syringe from his trouser pocket. There was a high concentration of potassium chloride in the syringe. In less than a minute, the person's heart would stop beating. He bent down and the syringe was getting closer and closer to Mika Kito's arm. The door opened, and before the female assassin could see the person outside the door clearly, a swift and heavy punch came towards her. She reflexively dodged. Everything happened too fast, and the male assassin had no time to care about his companions. He made up his mind and injected the syringe into Mika Kito's arm. In a split second, Mika Kito opened her eyes and reached out to grab the male assassin's arm. Her cold eyes sent chills down his spine. The male assassin attacked with his other hand, but Mika Kito dodged it easily. She tore off the oxygen tube on her nose, and they started fighting. At the same time, the female assassin was also fighting with the person outside the door. While she was unprepared, the person stabbed her heart with a dagger. The female assassin fell to the ground with a bang, right onto Lu Xing's body. Fresh blood gushed out from her chest as she unwillingly widened her eyes and stared unwaveringly at the woman standing in front of her. Trembling, she squeezed out a few words, "Vermilion bird, it's you. Since you know it's me, rest in peace." Suzaku pulled the female assassin off Lu Xing and pushed her to the side. Blood flowed everywhere. "You." The female assassin glared at her furiously. Her body twitched rapidly, and she stopped breathing. Mika Kito had also subdued the male assassin. Soon, two of his men rushed over and cleaned up the messy ward. They cleaned up all the bloodstains as though nothing had happened. Beitangshan had already changed out of his hospital gown and was wearing a black suit. The gauze on his head had also been removed and thrown into the trash can. His handsome face was cold. His eyes swept over the male killer who had been knocked unconscious by him and said coldly, "Take him back." "Yes." The two men got a wheelchair from somewhere and threw the assassin onto it. They covered his head and face with a blanket and pushed him out of the hospital. Suzaku glanced at Lu Xing, who was placed on the hospital bed. "What about him?" Mika Kito said indifferently. "There can't be no patient in the ward. Make him look like me." Suzaku's mouth twitched. "Even if Lu Xing is bandaged and disguised, he won't be able to create so many wounds on your body." Mika Kito was expressionless. "The doctor won't mind so much. Pretend I didn't say anything." Vermilion Bird obediently changed Lu Xing's appearance into Beitangshan's. She then wrapped a gauze around his head and inserted an oxygen tube into his nose, making all the necessary preparations. Poor Lu Xing. Not only did he sacrifice his own body as bait, but he was also knocked out by 2 anesthetic needles and had to pretend to be a patient. God bless him. Before Zhu Kei and Beitangshan left, Zhu Kei expressed her sympathy for Lu Xing in the depths of her heart. The corridor was quiet. Only their footsteps could be heard. Mika Kito walked in front of them. His black suit accentuated his figure perfectly, and he exuded a domineering aura. Suzaku followed him into the elevator. There were only the two of them in the empty elevator. She looked straight ahead and said indifferently, "Will they attack again? Would Lu Xing, that unlucky guy, be caught by the Godfather's men again?" Mika Kito also looked straight ahead and said indifferently, "There are still people secretly monitoring the hospital. What we need is a live witness." The male killer that they had kidnapped would be an important breakthrough for him to find out who was the mastermind. Suzaku followed Mika Kito into the basement of his villa. She felt like she was reliving an old memory. Once, she was tied to the wall by Mika Kito, just like that killer. She couldn't resist his methods and told him who was the mastermind. She wondered if this unlucky killer would confess. The killer was awakened by the cold water. His limbs were spread out and locked by the iron rings on the wall. He was stuck to the wall with his arms and legs spread out. He stared coldly at Mika Kito. Under his hateful gaze, Beitangshan calmly sat on the chair and flipped through the information on the table. You're called Ghost Hand, the #2 killer in a city. Ghost Hand didn't respond. The corners of Beitang Shen's lips curled up as his deep gaze landed on Ghost Hand. He leaned back comfortably and said in a calm voice, Ghost Hand, you're a smart person. If you cooperate, I won't fuss over your offense this time. Ghost Hand believed that Mikakito was indeed extraordinary to be able to predict that the Godfather was going to kill him, set a trap to capture him, and find out his identity in such a short time. As a killer, credibility was important, but life was more important. Ghost Hand's eyes moved and he said slowly, what do you want to know? Mikakito took out 2 photos from the documents and handed them to Suzaku, indicating for her to show them to Ghost Hand. Suzaku took the photos and stood in front of Ghost Hand. She held 1 photo in each hand. One of the photos was Shangguan Ao's high school graduation photo when he was 17 years old, and the other was a photo of Su Xingchen's godfather sent by Bailey Han. Mikakito said indifferently, I have done a biological comparison between these 2 photos, and the results show that the person in these 2 photos is the same person. You just have to tell me if the person who hired you to kill me is him. Ghost Hand looked carefully and said calmly, Suzaku also knows the person who hired me to kill you. He is the Godfather. But none of us have seen the Godfather's true face. Mikakito's slender fingers tapped on the table, and her lips curved into a cruel and cold smile. So, you are useless to me. There was a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. Naturally, Ghost Hand caught it at a glance. He said calmly, although I have never seen Godfather's true face, I recognize his hands. Ghost Hand was given this title because he had a pair of dexterous hands. No lock in the world could stop him, and he had never met a safe that he could not open. His hands were dexterous, so it was easy for him to notice the hands of others. For example, the Godfather with whom he had made many transactions. The Godfather has a scar of about 1 centimeter on the back of his right hand. The nail of his left thumb was pressed by something heavy, so it is flatter than the other nails. Mikakito handed her phone to Suzaku. Zoom in on the Godfather's hands in the photo. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 211. Suzaku enlarged the picture of the Godfather's hand and projected it onto the screen. Ghost Hand looked at it carefully and said, I'm sure that this man is the Godfather. Shangguan Ao was the Godfather. After many twists and turns, the Godfather's true identity was finally revealed. However, Mikakito was not happy at all. She waved her hand coldly and said, let him go. 2 men unlocked the iron shackles on Ghost Hand's hands and feet and put him down from the wall. Blindfold him and send him out. After the men got Ghost Hand out of the villa, Suzaku raised her eyebrows and said, I thought you wouldn't let him go. Mikakito glanced at her and said, there is a saying, lure the snake out of its hole. Ghost Hand had betrayed Shangguan Ao, so of course Shangguan Ao would not let him go. Just let the 2 of them fight. His cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and saw that it was Bailey Han. Mikakito answered the call and said coldly, what's up? Bailey Han said calmly, my men have found the Godfather's residence. Xia Gengzi Sr. and his men had followed the Godfather for several days and finally found the Godfather's home. Mikakito wrote down the address he gave. After a moment of silence, he said, I found out the Godfather's true identity. His name is Shangguan Ao, and he is the younger brother of Shangguan Bo, the CEO of Henglong Group. I will protect Xia Xia. Bailey Han knew that he was telling him about this to raise his vigilance, so that Shangguan Ao would not hurt Xia Xia. Mikakito ended the call in silence. His body suddenly leaned against the chair like a towering mountain, and his whole body exuded an extremely oppressive aura. Suzaku quietly left the basement, leaving the whole space to him. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall at the door lazily, waiting for his call. When she realized what was going on, she was shocked. When did she become so servile? Evening. Mikakito and Suzaku stood outside the Godfather's villa in their night suits. Hackers had already hacked the surveillance cameras in the villa and replaced them with fake information. Suzaku turned her head and looked at the tall man beside her. She frowned and tried to stop him for the last time. You're injured. Are you sure you want to do it yourself? This kind of injury won't kill me. In fact, when he moved, the wound would still hurt, but the grudge between him and his godfather had to be resolved by himself before he would be satisfied. Suzaku shrugged helplessly. Since you don't care about your own life, I don't need to stop you. Mika Kito looked at her coldly. You're underestimating me. Why don't we have a bet to see who can kill more people? Just the two of us? According to the news, there were at least 20 bodyguards in the godfather's villa, not counting the assassins and security guards under his command. What? Are you scared? Mika Kito's lips curved into a mocking smile. So, the number one female assassin is nothing more than this. Damn male chauvinist. Why would I be scared? What a joke. Suzaku gritted her teeth and retorted. I'm worried that your wound will tear and you won't be able to fend off the enemy. I don't have the strength to carry you out. Are you sure you don't want to ask one of your men to carry you out? Mika Kito's facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. He was exuding a cold aura. The loser of the bet has to agree to one condition of the winner. Okay, deal. Suzaku high-fived him. The two of them were like cheetahs as they nimbly flipped over the 4-meter-tall wall. After landing lightly on the ground, the two of them quickly hid their figures and very tacitly, one in front and one behind, quietly lurked towards the villa under the night sky. Beitangshan walked in front. His eyes quickly glanced at the surveillance cameras in the surroundings, and then cast his gaze on the small attic opposite the garden. There was a surveillance point there, and a sentry was standing there. Vermilion Bird had also noticed it. She quickly observed and discovered that there was only one man in the attic. So, without waiting for Beitangshan to make a move, she took the initiative to pull out a silencer gun from her waist and aimed it at the man's forehead. She suddenly shot, and the man fell on the small attic with a plop. Vermilion Bird tilted her head to look at Beitangshan, only to see that the moment she killed someone, he had already moved to the front of the villa and grabbed the throat of a patrolling bodyguard with one hand. Under the dim light, his face was expressionless, but his eyes were cold. Lao Si, what happened? Someone heard the thud from the attic and shouted at the top of his lungs. Suzaku pounced on the man the moment he walked up to the attic. She covered his mouth with her left hand and aimed at his forehead with her right hand. She pulled the trigger. Blood spurted out. She nimbly avoided the blood and hooked his body with one leg. She slowly lowered him to the ground to prevent him from making a loud noise. Mika Kito looked back at her. She raised her eyebrows and held up 2 fingers to indicate that she had killed 2 people. He stood motionless in the same place. Suddenly, like lightning, he pulled out a silencer and aimed in the direction of Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird's movement stiffened as she heard the sound of someone falling to the ground behind her. It turned out that she was proud of her achievement and did not notice that someone was approaching her. Under the light, she could clearly see the mocking smile on his face. She gritted her teeth in anger, but she could not do anything. She was too careless and almost lost her life. Beitangshan saved Vermilion Bird's life, but the sound of Vermilion Bird falling to the ground attracted the attention of the other bodyguards. Someone discovered the corpse on the ground and shouted, "Someone is invading, everyone be alert." The lights outside the villa suddenly lit up. The whole garden was as bright as day. Mika Kito and Suzaku were instantly exposed under the light. They calmly faced the intruders with guns in their hands and directly barged into the villa. The two of them were like Azuras from hell. They reeked of blood, their faces were cold, and their eyes were bloodthirsty. Everywhere they passed, they left behind stiff corpses. The smell of blood permeated the air, and the whole villa became lifeless. Blood flowed like a river. They stepped over the corpses and went upstairs. The godfather didn't expect that his nest had been exposed. He was still on the bed with the 2 beauties. Suddenly, he heard a hurried knock on the door. "Boss, there's an assassin. We can't hold them off." The godfather's eyes suddenly turned cold. He pushed the beauty under him away, grabbed the bathrobe on the ground and hurriedly wrapped it around himself. He reached for the bedside table and took out the gun. "Brother Ao, don't leave me behind. I'm so scared." One of the beauties saw the godfather running away with the gun and quickly hugged his leg. "Get lost." The godfather mercilessly kicked her away. Bang! 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 The godfather broke the light bulbs in the garden first, and the garden returned to darkness. The moment he jumped out of the window, the door of the room was kicked open by Beitang Shen. He turned a blind eye to the beauties lying on the bed and quickly ran to the window, only to see a black shadow rushing into the garden. He raised the gun and shot at the black shadow. Unfortunately, he only hit the shadow once. After that, he ran into the dark shadow and could no longer see where he was. At this time, Vermilion Bird, who was downstairs, had already chased out of the hall. From her position, she just happened to see her godfather jump into the pool under the rockery. She chased after him and fiercely shot at the pool until she ran out of bullets and could no longer pull the trigger. "How is it?" Mika Keto jumped out of the window and ran to her side. Streams of blood came out of the pool, but the godfather's body did not turn up for a long time. He ran away. "There must be a trap in the pool." Suzaku frowned. "I shot his leg. He can't run far." Mika Keto said coldly, "Tell Lu Xing to go after Shangguan Ao." "Got it." Suzaku relayed his order to Lu Xing through the headset. The whole villa was now dead. Except for the two naked women in the godfather's room, there was no other living thing. Suzaku looked up at the godfather's room and reminded him faintly, "The two women saw your face." Mika Keto strode out. He did not want to stay here any longer. His cold voice drifted from the front. "They can't say a word." At first, Vermilion Bird thought that he had silenced them. Later, she learned from Lu Xing that he had forcibly fed them poison. This kind of poison would damage their brain nerves. After 12 hours, they would become crazy, commonly known as mental patients. The two of them swaggered out of the villa. A Maybach was parked 100 meters away. Mika Keto stood in front of the back door of the car. "You drive." Suzaku raised her eyebrows and did not object. She quickly opened the car door for him. He bent over and sat in the back seat. She closed the door and jumped into the driver's seat. She stepped on the accelerator and sped away at a fast speed. She looked at him through the rearview mirror. He was leaning against the seat with his eyes closed. His brows were slightly furrowed, as if he was enduring great pain. Her gaze moved down and landed on his chest. The black night suit seemed to have darkened, as if it had been drenched by water. She frowned, suspecting that the wound on his chest had torn open and blood was seeping out. She accelerated to the maximum speed. The black Maybach sped on the road like a cheetah. When they returned to the villa, Mika Keto's body swayed when he got out of the car. He supported his chest with one hand. Suzaku reached out to help him. He said coldly, "No need." This man, even if he was injured, he would not forget to maintain his dignity. Suzaku stared at his back. Her long eyelashes drooped slightly. The doctor examined Beitang Shen. He took off his night suit, revealing his broad and muscular chest. The gauze that was wrapped around his chest had indeed been stained with blood. The doctor sighed, "Shen, the wound has ruptured again. Based on this situation, when will the injury get better? You can't continue to be so willful." Welfare, Songshu 566. Chapter 212. The doctor was Japanese and spoke in Japanese, so Suzaku could barely understand him. When she heard the word willful, she couldn't help but giggle. Mika Keto looked up at her unhappily. She stood with her hands behind her back, puffed out her chest, and looked straight ahead with an expressionless face. It was as if the giggle didn't come from her. The doctor's name was Miyamoto Hanzo, and he was an old man in his 50s. He used to work for Mika Kito's father, Hoitang Tsuruchi, for many years. He was a senior in the Yamaguchi-gumi, so he treated Mika Kito as an uncle and niece. He didn't have too many scruples when he spoke. As he treated Mika Kito's wound, he grumbled, "My medical skills are very good, but when I encounter an uncooperative patient, there's really nothing I can do." Suzaku's expressionless face gradually opened up a crack. Click. It twitched. Beitang Shen furrowed his brows. He didn't expect that Tang Wulin would become more and more outrageous. He muttered in a low voice, "I think it's better to find someone to watch over you so that you don't waste my medicine and gauze." Mika Kito's frown deepened. "Uncle Hanzo, you're getting older. You're getting more and more naggy." Miyamoto Hanzo rebandaged his wound and glared at him. "If you weren't so willful, why would I be naggy?" He looked up at Suzaku, who was looking straight ahead. He smiled and said, "Suzaku, I'll leave Shin to you. At least let him rest in Gigai for 3 days." Suzaku's mouth twitched. "Uncle Miyamoto, are you sure you're talking to me?" "Of course it's you, Shao Quebec. Among the young people in the Yamaguchi-gumi, you're the only one who dares to shout at Shin." Miyamoto Hanzo took off his rubber gloves and patted Suzaku's shoulder with a smile. "So, I'll leave this difficult task to you." Although Miyamoto Hanzo was old, his strength was not weak. Suzaku was caught off guard and was slapped by him. The corner of her mouth twitched even more. "Uncle Miyamoto, are you sure you don't have a grudge against me?" She wanted her to go against Mika Kito and make that domineering man listen to her. This was simply a dream. But wait. Suzaku's mind flashed. Back in Shangwan Ao's villa, she had a competition with Mika Kito to see who could kill more people. "You still owe me a favor." Suzaku crossed her arms and stared at Mika Kito. Mika Kito frowned. Suzaku raised her eyebrows. "If you had killed those 2 women, you would have killed one more person than me. But you let them go, so you've lost. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept defeat." "Why? Are you trying to go back on your word? Tell me your condition." Mika Kito had almost forgotten that they had made a bet. "My condition is that you're not allowed to move around for the next 3 days, and you're not allowed to do anything dangerous." She smiled and said calmly, "It's best if you stay in bed and rest." Mika Kito stared at her with her sharp eyes. She was suspicious. "I thought you would let me restore your freedom." She shrugged nonchalantly and patted Miyamoto Hanzo's shoulder. "Who asked Uncle Hanzo to be so naggy?" Miyamoto Hanzo didn't understand Chinese, but from their expressions, he could tell that Suzaku had convinced Mika Kito. He grinned and said, "I'll get going first. Shao Kei, you have to keep an eye on Ashin for me." Miyamoto Hanzo's short figure slipped away. Suzaku said calmly, "You heard what Uncle Hanzo said. You're under my control for the next 3 days. You've got guts." Mika Kito stared at her sharply. "I'm not gutsy, but I have a good memory. I always remember that the loser has to obey the winner's conditions." She said calmly. If he had known, he wouldn't have been soft-hearted and spared the lives of those 2 women. "Take your medicine." She opened the medicine bottle left by Miyamoto Hanzo and poured out the pills. She took a glass of water and handed it to him. Did she really think that he was a 3-year-old child who needed to be looked after all the time? Mika Kito's mouth twitched. Although he was unhappy, he had to accept his loss. He took the pills angrily and swallowed them. After a tiring night and the sedative in the medicine, Mika Kito fell asleep quickly. After Suzaku made sure that he was asleep, she left the room and stretched. She was too lazy to go home, so she found a guest room to rest. The godfather was indeed a sly old fox. When Lu Xing and the others were following his orders, they did find a cleverly designed mechanism at the bottom of the pool. It was a stone door. After entering the stone door, they walked through a dark tunnel. When they climbed out, they were already in the river behind the villa. A speedboat was tied to a wooden pile by the river. But now, the speedboat was gone, and the bloodstains extended all the way here. It was obvious that the godfather had escaped on the speedboat. But even if he escaped, it was useless. Mika Keto had issued an arrest warrant for him in the underworld. At this time, the godfather had already escaped from the villa area using a speedboat. When he bought this villa, he had already planned his escape route. The small river outside the villa led to the estuary. If he went all the way down, he would reach the harbor. Soon, he would be able to use his connections to get a ticket to leave the country. But he couldn't leave the country because he couldn't abandon Su Xingqian. Moreover, he didn't believe that Mika Keto was powerful enough to dig him out of a city. The river was getting wider and wider. He stopped the speedboat and found the first aid kit on the speedboat. Biting the soft stick, he dug out the bullet from his leg and then the bullet from his arm. The pain made him break out in a cold sweat and he almost fainted. He endured the pain and bandaged his wound. He sat weakly in the cabin with sweat dripping from his forehead. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. The villa's address was exposed, but he still had other places to stay. He made a call and asked one of his most trusted men to pick him up at the harbor. He then found a tea house near the harbor and dragged his injured leg to wait inside. But he never expected that he would run into that woman, Su Yunxian. Su Yunxian came down from the private room with a foreign man. The foreign man was tall and handsome. He had a charming smile on his face as he hugged her waist. They were as intimate as a couple. The godfather's eyes flashed and he suddenly called out, "Miss Su Yunxian." Su Yunxian was about to leave the tea house with the foreign man when she heard someone calling her. She turned around in surprise and saw a middle-aged man sitting in front of the window waving at her. She pursed her lips and whispered something in the foreign man's ear. Then, she walked towards the godfather. She looked at the man in front of her quietly. His face was pale and he was wrapped in a bathrobe. His left arm and leg were stained with blood. A look of disgust flashed in her eyes and she asked condescendingly, "Who are you?" The godfather smiled meaningfully. "Godfather." Su Yunxian's face changed color. She looked at him carefully and asked suspiciously, "Are you really the godfather? Wasn't the godfather very powerful? How did he become like this?" "He was like a perverted vagrant." The godfather smiled. "The last time we talked on the phone, you gave me something. I haven't thanked you properly." "You don't have to say it. I believe you are." Su Yunxian knew that he was referring to the time when she gave him the drug sample. Naturally, she believed his identity. She said calmly, "How did you become like this?" The godfather smiled bitterly. "It's a long story. I want to talk to you." He looked up at the foreign man who was waiting for Su Yunxian at the entrance of the tea house. "Why don't you let your friend leave first?" Su Yunxian looked at him deeply. "You better have something important to talk to me about. I won't let you down." "All right then. Wait for me for a few minutes." Su Yunxian walked to the foreign man and hooked her arm around his. They walked out of the tea house and she said in English, "Darling, I met an old friend. I want to talk to him for a while. You can go back to the hotel first." The foreign man held her waist with one hand and lowered his head. He looked at her beautiful face with a smile. "Baby, it's not easy for me to come to China. Don't you want to stay with me for a while?" Su Yunxian wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the lips. She said gently, "Darling, I'll visit you tomorrow. Be good." "All right, you heartless woman." The man shrugged and kissed her sexy red lips. After tasting them for a long time, he let go of her reluctantly. He bit her earlobe and threatened her in a low voice. "You're not allowed to sleep with him." Su Yunxian punched him in the chest. "Please, I don't want that old man even if you give him to me." The man chuckled and let go of her. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and narrowed his eyes. He watched her graceful figure walk towards the godfather and a cold smile appeared on his sexy lips. Su Yunxian sat elegantly in the seat opposite the godfather and said indifferently, "What do you want to talk to me about?" The godfather's shrewd eyes flickered and he smiled. "It seems that Miss Su has already given up on Bailey Han. That foreign man seemed to be her new lover." She took a sip of tea elegantly and put down the teacup gently. "So what if I give up? So what if I don't give up? If you've already given up, we can end our conversation here. If you haven't, I'll be happy to work with Miss Su." Su Yunxian raised her charming eyes and looked at him. "Tell me. Who knows, I might be interested in your proposal." In other words, she hadn't given up on Bailey Han. The godfather's lips curled into a smile. "In 2 days, Bailey Han and Xia Dong will be getting married. Don't you want to give them a gift?" She smiled meaningfully. "A gift? I've been thinking about it, but I don't have a good choice. Do you have any suggestions?" The godfather leaned forward and whispered something in her ear. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "What benefits will you get if you do this?" Benefits, Hongcha 866. Chapter 213. The godfather's eyes turned cold. "My target is Mika Keto. That's too roundabout. Why not? Let's cast a long line to catch a big fish." Moreover, he was injured and his power had been damaged. He needed some time to recuperate. She looked around and smiled. "Okay, I agree to work with you." The godfather raised his teacup and smiled coldly. "I wish us a happy cooperation." Su Yunxian also raised her teacup and clinked it with his. Happy cooperation. The preparations for the wedding had been completed. Xia Dong started to feel nervous when she remembered that they would be preparing for the wedding the next day. Bailey Han pulled her out of the door and said that he wanted to take her somewhere. He drove her to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. After she got out of the car, she turned to look at him in confusion. He held her hand and smiled. "Honey, let's go visit Mother. I hope she won't be angry and blame us for coming too late." So that's what happened. Xia Dong felt a lump in her throat. Her heart was filled with gratitude. He took out a bouquet of lilies from the back seat and held her hand as they walked to Xia Ling's tombstone. He placed the lilies in front of the tombstone, straightened his back and said sincerely, "Mom, my name is Bailey Han. I married your daughter and will protect her from the wind and rain from now on. We will be holding our wedding tomorrow. Although you won't be able to be there, I hope you can see Xia's happy smile in heaven." Xia Dong burst into tears. She squatted in front of the tombstone and stroked the small photo. She sobbed and said, "Mom, I'm very happy now. Please bless us so that we'll be safe and happy forever. Mom, if you're in heaven, you must bless Ahan so that he won't suffer anymore. You must bless Xiao Guai so that she can recover soon." After coming out of the cemetery and walking on the tree-lined path, Xia Dong suddenly stopped in her tracks. She stared at the man in front of her. She squeezed Bailey Han's hand excitedly. Bailey Han comfortingly patted the back of her hand and stood there with her, watching as Xia Jinqing slowly approached with a bouquet of chrysanthemums. Xia Jinqing also saw the two of them and his expression was awkward for a moment. However, he still took heavy steps and approached them under Xia Dong's cold gaze. Xia Dong looked at him coldly. "Who told you that my mother's tombstone is here?" Xia Jinqing's expression stiffened. I asked your uncle. My mother doesn't want to see you." She was like a kitten, her fur standing on end, ready to attack at any time. Xia, you're getting married tomorrow. No matter what, I'm your father. I want your mother to know about this as well." Xia Jinqing looked at her uneasily with a pitiful expression. "You don't have to worry about these things. I'll tell Mom myself." Xia Dong clenched her hands into fists and stared at him. "Go away. Don't appear in front of Mom." Xia, tears welled up in Xia Jinqing's eyes. At this moment, he no longer had the handsome demeanor of a young man, nor the elegance of a wealthy family. All he had was the sorrow of an old man with one foot in the grave. Honey, don't be so agitated. Be careful not to hurt the baby. Bailey Han put his arm around Xia Dong's shoulder and comforted her gently. Don't be angry. Let me talk to Mr. Xia for a while. You go back to the car first, okay? Xia Dong took a deep breath and tried to calm down. She didn't know why, but when she saw that man, she couldn't help but feel indignant and resentful. She knew that it wasn't worth it, but she couldn't help it. She kept repeating in her heart, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. She didn't look at Xia Jinqing anymore, only Bailey Han in her eyes. Okay, come back quickly. Only Bailey Han and Xia Jinqing were left on the boulevard. Although Xia Jinqing didn't have any self-respect in front of his daughter, in front of his son-in-law, he was imposing. He puffed out his chest and raised his head with a serious expression. Bailey Han, I know I'm not worthy of being a father and have no right to criticize Xia, but I'm still her father. I'm handing her over to you, so I hope you can treat her well. Bailey Han didn't show the slightest hint of ridicule or disdain. He said seriously, you don't have to worry about that. I'll treat her well. No matter what, you're still Xia's father and I'll respect you. However, for tomorrow's wedding, Xia intends to let uncle hold her hand and walk her into the church. Xia Jinqing smiled bitterly. I understand. I don't have the face to attend the wedding. Mingyuan has always treated her like his own daughter. With him entrusting Xia to you, I don't have any regrets. Bailey Han didn't want to say more. He nodded his head and said goodbye. He took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. Without looking back, he asked calmly, if you could choose again, would you still abandon Xia and her mother? Xia Jinqing's heart suddenly hurt. He didn't know how to answer. He had made this choice because he had no other choice, but the result wasn't what he had expected. But if he hadn't made this choice, the result would have been even worse. His silence made his attitude clear. Bailey Han's eyes turned cold. How dare he still not repent? If he wasn't Xia's father, he really wanted to beat him up. Back in the car, Xia sat in the front passenger seat. She lowered the glass and looked into the distance. She didn't come back to her senses until he opened the car door. She looked back at him and smiled faintly. What took you so long? He stroked her hair, feeling sorry for her. I wanted to beat him up, but I couldn't decide, so it took me some time. She smiled. Don't beat him up. Otherwise, you'll be struck by lightning. After all, he's an elder. She seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on her face froze. He asked with concern, what's wrong? She smiled stiffly. Do you think I'll be struck by lightning? My attitude towards him was so bad. I can't even be considered filial. No, God of Thunder will understand your difficulties. He pulled her into his arms and stroked her hair gently. We'll treat him better in the future. After all, he's an elder. She buried her head in his arms. After a long time, she said, okay. Before he came back, she thought a lot. She was now a mother of 3, so she shouldn't be angry anymore. Maybe she should try to let go of the hatred in her heart. Bailey's eldest son, Bailey Han, and Xia Dong's wedding was held in the church as scheduled. Accompanied by the beautiful wedding march, Xia Dong held Gao Mingyuan's arm and walked into the church leisurely. 2 cute little flower girls walked behind them, holding on to Xia Dong's wedding dress. Their delicate little faces had sweet smiles. Those with sharp eyes could recognize them at a glance. They were Bailey Han and Xia Dong's precious sons, Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao. Xia Dong was wearing a pure white wedding dress. Her black hair was tied up in a high bun, revealing her snow-white neck. Around her neck was a ruby necklace that shone with a mesmerizing luster. The design of her chest and abdomen was smooth, outlining her perfect curves. The layers of the skirt were dotted with broken diamonds like stars. In the morning light, she walked slowly and gracefully, like a fairy who was riding the waves. At this moment, she was the most perfect bride. She was so beautiful that people couldn't help but hold their breath. Everyone's eyes fell on her, but there was only one person in her eyes. The man standing at the end of the red carpet, waiting for her. Dressed in a white suit, Bailey Han stood tall and straight. There was an elegant and charming smile on his godlike handsome face. His obsidian-like eyes were filled with deep love as he watched her approach him. Gao Mingyuan solemnly handed Xia Dong's hand to Bailey Han. This was a lifetime of trust and a lifetime of responsibility. His eyes couldn't help but redden. Bailey Han also solemnly held Xia Dong's hand and solemnly promised, "I will love Xia Dong for the rest of my life. I will never leave her." The priest began to preside over the wedding. Is there anyone here who can provide a valid reason to point out that the marriage of the two newlyweds is not legal? Suzaku couldn't help but glance at Mika Kito beside her. He looked forward expressionlessly, as if he didn't hear the priest's words. She really didn't understand why he dragged his injured body to Xia Dong's wedding. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Su Yunxian gritted her teeth, made up her mind, and suddenly stood up. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone's gazes turned to her. Other than the entire Bailey family, there were also people from the Su family, as well as all the influential people in City A. Everyone knew that Su Yunxian and Bailey Han once had a relationship. They all stared at her as if they were waiting to watch a good show. The expressions of the Bailey family members changed. Worried that she would say something inappropriate, Madame Su quickly tugged at her arm and said in a low voice, "Yunxian, what are you doing? Sit down quickly." The priest also looked at her and asked, "Madam, do you think the marriage of the two newlyweds is not legal?" Su Yunxian pulled her arm out of Mrs. Su's grip and smiled elegantly. "No, I agree with their marriage. However, the groom and I are good friends. I want to give him a song as a gift." Yunxian. Mrs. Su's expression darkened. She pulled her arm and tried to change her mind. However, she smiled and said, "Mommy, trust me. It's really just a gift." The priest nodded in agreement. The Bailey family couldn't stop her at all. She smiled elegantly. A blessing for the wedding for the groom and the bride. In the silent church, her beautiful voice sounded, but the lyrics made everyone's expression change drastically. "My invitation card is your wedding invitation card. Everything you wanted has now become my heartbreak. You're always too sober, and I can't get drunk. You even forced me to give you my blessings. Your wedding invitation card is my invitation card. You invited me to raise my glass, and I can only return the toast. Everyone here knows that we used to be so good. Now that my heart is broken, you still want me to smile." Su Yunxian's eyes were filled with tears at the end of the song. Her sorrowful expression attracted the sympathy of many people who didn't know the truth. Awesome novel, Shinwu 799. Chapter 214. There were already people whispering in the church. They seemed to be discussing the relationship between Bailey Han and Su Yunxian. Mika Kito stared coldly at Su Yunxian. He would not let anyone who wanted to hurt Xia have an easy time. The old madam was so angry that her face turned pale. If it weren't for the occasion, she would have asked someone to chase Su Yunxian out. In her heart, Su Yunxian had always been smart and rational. She didn't expect her to do such a thing. Bailey Jinxiu's expression was also very ugly. Bailey Han held her hand quietly and cast a worried look at Bailey Han and Xia Dong. The two of them had now become the target of public criticism. Everyone's eyes were on them, waiting for them to respond. Xia Dong's hand trembled a little. Bailey Han sensed it. He held her hand gently and fixed his gloomy gaze on Su Yunxian. There was a faint smile on his lips, but there was no warmth. He said politely, "Thank you, Miss Su, for your gift. In return, I'll also give you a song." The whispers became louder. Everyone was curious about what song he would sing in return for Su Yunxian. Bailey Han held Xia Dong's hand tightly. He cleared his throat and said in a loud voice that everyone could hear, The name of this song is very suitable for my current identity. It's called Brother Has a Wife. After saying this, he started singing the song with his sexy and magnetic voice. The lyrics also shocked everyone. The beauty who loves me, listen to me. I already have a wife at home. Your love hurts her and hurts me. I advise you not to live the life of a mistress. Brother has a wife, don't seduce me. I can't betray her and live with you. Brother has a wife, please don't love me. I can't give you happiness or any promises. At the end of the song, everyone was stunned, especially Su Yunxian. She did not expect that Bailey Han would use such an extreme method to embarrass her. Clap, clap, clap. It was actually Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao clapping their hands. If conditions permitted, they wanted to shout, "Daddy is mighty." Bailey Jing held her forehead with one hand. God, her big brother, who had always paid attention to taste, actually sang such a popular song. His image as a male god had been completely destroyed. However, it was good that he was ruined, lest those indecent women outside covet him again. Mrs. Su was utterly humiliated. She glared at her daughter in grief and indignation. After the shock, Su Yunxian's face alternated between red and white. She looked at Bailey Han in grief and said word by word, "Bailey Han, Xia Dong, I wish you happiness." Tears flowed from her beautiful eyes. She smiled miserably. Ignoring everyone's shocked gazes, she covered her face and dashed out of the church. Mrs. Su hesitated for a moment. She was still worried about her daughter. She stood up from her seat and smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, everyone. Father, please continue." She hurriedly chased after him. Originally, they thought that the farce was over and the priest was about to continue presiding over the wedding. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The church door was pushed open. Everyone turned around curiously. They saw a tall and handsome man standing at the door. His entire body was exuding anger. He looked at Xia Dong from afar and could not suppress the anger in his voice. "Xia Dong, how could you marry someone else?" Boom! Everyone was shocked. Someone recognized the man and whispered, "It's Bailey Yun, the second young master of the Bailey family." What does the second young master mean? Could it be that he likes his sister-in-law? Wasn't there a rumor that said so in the past? The discussion became more and more intense. Bailey Yun turned a deaf ear to it. His handsome and tall figure stood at the door, exuding a vicious aura. "Ah Yun, why are you only back now? If you were any later, you wouldn't be able to make it in time for your brother and sister-in-law's wedding." The old madam stood up. She had a smile on her face, but her voice was extremely strict. She especially emphasized the words, brother and sister-in-law. Bailey Yun clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were like sharp knives, slicing Bailey Han and Xia Dong apart. The image of them standing together happily and sweetly was so glaring. He wanted to rush up and kick Bailey Han away from her and replace him as the groom. Sister-in-law, the woman he loved deeply, was about to become his sister-in-law. Blood surged in his chest and a metallic taste rose in his throat. His legs seemed to be filled with lead as he walked in with heavy steps from the door. His eyes were too frightening and cold. Xia Dong couldn't help but tremble. Bailey Han held her hand tightly. Bailey Han calmly met Bailey Yun's gaze and a smile appeared on his face. "Ah Yun, it's good that you're back." Bailey Yun stopped 2 meters away from them and stared at them coldly. "Second brother, come and sit down. I specially saved a seat for you." Bailey Jing saw that Bailey Yun was standing there in a daze. She quickly went up to him and hugged his arm, smiling as she dragged him to the side. Even if he rushed back, it wouldn't change anything. Bailey Yun was like a puppet, allowing her to push him to the seat. His deep eyes gradually lost their light and became filled with despair. Fortunately, the priest had seen many strange wedding scenes and quickly recovered from his shock. He coughed and continued to preside over the wedding. "Mr. Bailey Han, do you take Miss Xia Dong as your wife, take care of her, love her, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, love and respect each other, and never leave each other, and be together forever? Bailey Han solemnly replied, I do. Miss Xia Dong, do you take Bailey Han, do you take care of him, love him, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, love and respect each other, and never leave each other, and be together forever? She didn't hesitate. I do. Groom and bride, please exchange rings. Bailey Han took a ring from the Bible and carefully put it on Xia Dong's finger. She took the other ring and put it on his finger. With the legal rights granted by the law, I now declare that you are officially husband and wife. Now, the groom may kiss the bride. Bailey Han removed the veil on Xia Dong's face and lowered his head to kiss her lips. Their friends and relatives laughed and clapped. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao stood beside them, happily throwing flower petals into the air. Their laughter echoed in the empty church for a long time. Bai Tangshan glanced in Xia Dong's direction with a gloomy expression. Coincidentally, she also raised her head and looked in his direction. He saw surprise and guilt in her eyes. He forced himself to look away from her. He suddenly stood up and quietly left the church. He had witnessed their wedding and also witnessed Bailey Han's love for her. He didn't want to stay any longer. The vermilion bird was stunned for a moment before she quickly followed him. On the other side, Su Yunxian ran out of the church crying. She was caught by the reporters outside and they rushed over. She choked and said, I wish them all the best. Thank you, everyone. Please make way. She squeezed out of the reporters' encirclement. She lifted her dress and ran in her 10-centimeter high heels, not caring about her image at all. Mrs. Su chased after her and saw her running to the other side of the road from afar. Helpless, she was surrounded by reporters and could only watch her disappear on the street. Su Yunxian ran out of the street and didn't pay attention to her feet. She suddenly sprained her ankle. She lifted her skirt and bent down to check. Suddenly, a black Santana drove towards her. Screech, it braked and stopped beside her. Before she could react, two strong men jumped out of the car and approached her. You, what are you doing? She retreated in horror. A man quickly ran behind her, raised his palm, and heavily struck the back of her head. Her body went limp, and she immediately went limp in the man's arms. Quick, take her away. One of them jumped into the driver's seat and the other picked her up and threw her into the back seat of the car. They kidnapped her in broad daylight. After the wedding, dozens of luxury cars drove out of the parking lot outside the church and headed to the 5-star hotel where the wedding banquet was held. The hotel was built in the style of a European palace. In the magnificent hall, the luxurious crystal chandeliers shone brightly. People dressed to the nines sat in their seats, waiting for the bride and groom to appear. Soon, Xia Dong, who had changed into an evening gown, walked into the hall with Bailey Han's arm with an elegant smile on her face. As the MC, Xiao Tianxing teased with a smile, "Are you too late because the groom doesn't want to expose the bride's beauty in front of us?" Bailey Han answered seriously, "That's right. Xia Dong is my wife." The audience burst into laughter. They didn't expect the cold Bailey Han to have such an affectionate side. Bailey Yun stood alone on the balcony with his back to the lively hall. Looking at the beautiful sea view outside the hotel, he felt as if his heart had been dug out. His chest was empty and there were broken pearls in his eyes. His right hand couldn't help but grip the wine glass tightly. He raised his head and drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. He wanted to get drunk so that he could forget the pain. Unknowingly, he drank the whole bottle of wine, but he was still very sober. Hearing Bailey Han and Xia Dong's laughter, hearing his family speeches, and hearing people's blessings, he couldn't help but fly into a rage and throw the empty bottle downstairs. Bang! A loud sound was heard, and the broken glass splashed everywhere. Screams came from downstairs. "Ah, my leg! Oh my God, who threw the wine bottle down? Duobao, are you okay? It hurts, you're bleeding. Don't be afraid, I'll call an ambulance right away. No need to call an ambulance, Bailey Yun was shocked. Bleeding? Call an ambulance? So serious. He didn't mean to hurt others, but he was depressed and wanted to vent. When he heard that someone was injured, he didn't care about anything else and ran downstairs. Bai Lian's gaze hurriedly swept over, only to see a young woman sitting on the sofa in the hotel lobby. She was bending over, using a handkerchief to cover her right calf. Blood had already soaked through the handkerchief, and the dazzling blood color made him dizzy. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 2:15. He rushed to her. Miss, how's your leg? Li Duobao raised her head and saw a handsome face. She was stunned for a moment before she grinned. So it's you. Bailey Yun frowned. Now is not the time to strike up a conversation. Let me ask you, is your leg okay? It's okay, the wound isn't very deep. My friend has already asked the hotel staff to help me get the first aid kit. Her delicate brows furrowed. I'm not striking up a conversation. My name is Li Duobao, and I'm a flight attendant at South Central Airlines. A few months ago, you gave me a bracelet, and I wanted to return it to you. I've been looking for you for a long time. Do you remember? Bailey Yun heaved a sigh of relief. If he had made an unintentional mistake and caused her to cripple her leg, it would have been troublesome. Fortunately, the wound wasn't deep. He looked at her seriously. Round cheeks, a pair of crystal-like bright eyes, a delicate little nose, and pink lips. She couldn't be considered a stunning beauty, but she had a lively youthful beauty. He thought about it seriously again and suddenly remembered that when he was on the plane to America, there was a flight attendant who comforted him, so he casually gave the bracelet to her. He sat beside her and said lightly, "Since I gave it to you, it's yours. You don't have to return it to me. But I can't accept such a precious gift." She puffed up her cheeks and said seriously, "Moreover, that's a gift you intended to give to your beloved. All the more I can't accept it." His beloved. These words were like a sharp sword, ruthlessly stabbing into his chest. He grinned self-deprecatingly. "I don't need it anymore. I originally intended to give it to her when I confessed, but she rejected me. Now, she's married to my brother. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Li Duobao apologized profusely. If she had known, she wouldn't have mentioned this matter. Looking at his gloomy face, she carefully reached out and poked his arm. "I checked the passenger list and know that you're Bailey Yun. Can I call you by your name?" He answered casually. "Bailey Yun, when I was in university, I had a senior who I really liked. It wasn't easy for me to muster up the courage to confess to him. He agreed and I was so happy. But the next day, he suddenly told me that he had only made a bet with someone. He bet that I dared not confess to him. He also said that I had caused him to lose a meal." Li Duobao recounted everything in a gentle voice. Her tone was calm, without any pain or anger. Bailey Yun temporarily forgot his pain and looked up at her. "What happened after that?" Li Duobao touched his nose embarrassedly. "Later, I was so sad that I almost jumped off the building. It was my good friend who stopped me. She said, 'Li Duobao, if you dare to jump from here, I'll jump down to settle the score with you.'" Bailey Yun was stunned. She laughed. "Do you think that my friend is especially loyal? She's always like that. Every time I do something wrong, she'll hit my head and yell. It's so fun. That time, she pulled me down from the roof, hit my head and scolded me for a long time. Then, she started crying. Fool." His pitch-black eyes stared at her as he lightly spat out these two words. I said, "You're a silly." He suddenly had an impulse to hit her head like her friend. "That kind of rotten man isn't worth you jumping off a building for. If I were your friend, I'd hit your head and scold you to death too." Li Duobao touched his forehead with tears in his eyes. "It hurts." You hit me harder than my friend. His mouth moved. He wanted to say something, but suddenly, a girl's anxious voice was heard. Duobao, I asked someone to bring the medical kit. How are you? Li Duobao quickly said, Yu, run slower. Don't worry. My wound is fine. Bai Lian raised his head and looked over. A girl with short hair, who looked very handsome, was dragging a hotel staff member and sprinting over. Huff, I'm so tired. Quick, please help Duobao deal with his wound. Ren Yu bent down and held her knees as she panted. The staff was dragged all the way over by Ren Yu. He was so tired that he was panting. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and squatted in front of Li Duobao. He opened the medical kit and put on disposable medical gloves. Miss, I'm going to disinfect your wound. It'll hurt a little. Bear with it. Ren Yu took out a clean handkerchief from her bag and stuffed it into Li Duobao's mouth. Duobao, bear with it. Bai Liyun saw the 3 to 4 centimeters long wound and felt a little dizzy. He felt a little guilty. The staff put alcohol on Li Duobao's wound. She couldn't help but tremble. She was in so much pain that she was sweating. She bit the handkerchief tightly and didn't make a sound. The blood on the wound was cleaned and medicine was applied. Then, it was wrapped in gauze. Okay, Mississippi, remember, don't let the wound get wet. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Li Duobao smiled sweetly. Her face was still a little pale. You're welcome. A wine bottle suddenly fell from the hotel. It's our negligence. Please forgive us. The staff bowed apologetically. It's okay. I can't blame you. Li Duobao felt that she could only blame herself for being unlucky. She was just walking, but the fragments of the wine bottle splashed on her leg. The staff left. Ren Yu looked at Bai Liyun curiously. Duobao, who is he? Li Duobao smiled embarrassedly. I almost forgot to introduce you. Bai Liyun, this is my best friend, Ren Yu, that I mentioned to you just now. Yu, this is Bai Liyun. Bai Liyun. This name is so familiar. I must have heard it somewhere. Ren Yu frowned and patted her forehead. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. I know, ahem. Li Duobao quickly poked her with her arm, indicating that she shouldn't say anything. Unexpectedly, she had already blurted out, You're that crazy rich playboy who gave the bracelet to Duobao? Neurotic? Playboy? Bai Liyun didn't expect Li Duobao to use so many adjectives to describe his actions. He stared at her with interest. She touched her small nose and smiled embarrassedly. Well, playboy. I didn't say that. My original words were, rich playboy. Ren Yu raised her eyebrows, obviously not used to Li Duobao's pitiful appearance in front of Bai Liyun. Bai Liyun, what a coincidence that you're in this hotel. Yu, Li Duobao quickly pulled Ren Yu's arm. Don't mention it. Bai Liyun said lightly, a friend's wedding. He looked down at Li Duobao's injured calf and continued, Actually, I'm here to turn myself in. I was the one who threw the wine bottle downstairs. I'm very sorry that you're injured. Ren Yu was furious when she heard that. Hey, how can you be like this? How can you throw such a dangerous thing around? I'm very sorry. If apologies are useful, then why do we still need the police in this world? Ren Yu was furious. Do you know that Duobao has to fly to New York tomorrow? How do you expect her to go to work in this state? It was the first time Bai Liyun was scolded like a grandson by a woman. His handsome face was already faintly suffused with a dark aura. His thin lips were tightly pursed, as if he was enduring it. Yu, don't say any more. Bai Liyun didn't do it on purpose. I'm really fine. Don't worry about me. Li Duobao jumped up from the sofa and limped to Ren Yu's side. She hugged her arm. Yu, I'll take leave tomorrow. Anyway, I haven't taken any annual leave yet. I'll take a break at home. Relax, don't be angry. Ren Yu slapped her forehead in annoyance. Forget it. Even you, the victim, don't care. Why should I care so much? Her beautiful eyes swept over Bailey Yun and she snorted. Bailey Yun, you're already an adult. You should act like an adult. Don't do such a childish thing in the future. Bai Lian gritted his teeth and swallowed the words she was about to scold him. Li Duobao smiled apologetically. Bailey Yun, if you're fine, can you wait for a while? My house is nearby. I'll go back and get the bracelet and return it to you. Bailey Yun's slender foxy eyes twitched slightly. I've said that there's no need. Just treat it as my apology for hurting your leg. How can that be? He raised his hand to stop her from continuing. He said lightly, I'm a little drunk. I'll go back first. He didn't return to the banquet on the second floor. Instead, he walked straight to the hotel entrance. Li Duobao limped and wanted to catch up with him, but Ren Yuyu stopped her. Duobao, forget it. Bailey Yun didn't even look back. He walked straight to the hotel entrance and said a few words to the bellboy before tipping him. Ren Yuyu helped Li Duobao to the hotel entrance and planned to call a taxi home. The bellboy bowed politely and said, Miss, a gentleman has already called a taxi for you. The two of them looked at each other and thought of Bailey Yun. Li Duobao smiled. Sorry to trouble you. You're welcome. Please come this way. The bellboy sent them to the taxi. Ren Yuyu brushed the stray hair in front of her forehead and frowned. Bailey Yun doesn't seem to be a bad person. Duobao, did I scold him too harshly just now? Li Duobao nodded fiercely. It was really a little harsh. His expression changed. I was really afraid that he would fly into a rage and fight with you. Ren Yuyu rolled her eyes. Do you think I'm afraid of him fighting with me? Even if he fights with me, I'm not afraid. Li Duobao's face darkened. Yuyu, I know you're a taekwondo expert, but don't fight with others so easily. What if you meet someone stronger and suffer a loss? Ren Yuyu patted her head. Stupid, do I look like a brainless person? I'm just saying. When have I really fought with others? Li Duobao touched her forehead pitifully. I'm stupid because of you, okay? Ren Yuyu laughed sinisterly. One day, when you're no longer so brainless, I won't hit you anymore. Li Duobao's eyes were filled with tears. She was very smart, okay? While the two of them were arguing, the taxi arrived at the destination very quickly. Li Duobao was helped out of the car by Ren Yuyu. She frowned and asked in distress, Yuyu, what about that bracelet? Ren Yuyu said indifferently, keep it. Anyway, Bailey Yun doesn't want it. But, I don't think it's a good idea. She had never received such a valuable gift from a strange man. Didn't you say that it was a gift he intended to give to someone after his confession? Since his confession failed, keeping it would be sad. Ren Yuyu raised her eyebrows and said, just treat it as a kind gesture to help him deal with an abandoned item. Don't think of it as a gift. What kind of logic is that? I've become a kind-hearted person, this is called good karma. If you hadn't comforted him on the plane, he might have thrown the bracelet into the trash can. Li Duobao frowned and thought for a long time. She gritted her teeth and said, okay, I'll keep it for him first. When he needs it, I'll return it to him. When Bai Lian returned to the old mansion, it was very quiet. His family members were still in the hotel and had not returned. Even the servants had been given a day off because of the master's happy occasion. In the entire mansion, only the old housekeeper was left, guarding the door loyally. The after-effects of the red wine were strong. When he got out of the car, he was already staggering. Fortunately, the old butler supported him, so he didn't fall. Second young master, please sit in the living room. I'll go to the kitchen and get you a bowl of hangover soup. The old butler expected that someone would get drunk at the banquet, so he made the hangover soup in advance. Bailey Yun lay on the sofa and waved his hand drunkenly. The old butler quickly took the hangover soup and fed it to him. "Second young master, let me help you upstairs to rest." Bailey Yun closed his eyes lazily and whispered, "No, I'll wait here for them to come back." In the end, he couldn't resist the drunkenness and fell into a deep sleep before his family came back. Although the old butler was old, he had been on the battlefield with the old master when he was young. He also had a foundation in martial arts. It wasn't difficult for him to carry Bailey Yun, who was more than 1.8 meters tall, upstairs. Old Madam and the others had been entertaining the guests. It wasn't until the banquet ended that they realized that Bailey Yun was missing. Bailey Jing called his phone, but it was turned off. Then she called the old house. After the butler picked up, he knew that he had returned home. It was already afternoon when the whole family returned to the old house. Bailey Han and Xia Dong were both tired after a day of hard work. Old Madam asked them to go back to their rooms to rest for a while. The 3 children were also coaxed to go back to their rooms to rest. The chef was also on vacation, so Bai Jinxiu had to cook dinner herself. She made fragrant porridge and a few home-cooked dishes. The old butler knocked on everyone's door one by one and invited everyone downstairs to eat. When he arrived at Bailey Yun's door, he knocked for a long time, but no one responded. The old butler guessed that he was drunk and sleeping too soundly. Although Bai Jinxiu didn't like Bailey Yun, she still gave him some face in front of her husband. She calmly instructed the butler to leave some food for Bailey Yun to eat when he woke up. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 216. The family was eating dinner at the dining table when heavy footsteps sounded. Bailey Yun walked down the stairs in his pajamas with messy hair and sleepy eyes. He walked straight to the bathroom to wash his hands as if he didn't notice everyone's strange gazes. He sat at the dining table and leaned back lazily. "Butler, help me get a bowl of porridge." Bai Jinxiu's expression was ugly. She held it in for a long time but still couldn't hold it in. She said indifferently, "Ah Yun, wash up first before eating." Bailey Yun's long and narrow eyes were half closed as if he hadn't woken up yet. He yawned and said lazily, "But I'm hungry." Bai Jinxiu was furious. She slammed her chopsticks on the table. "Look at you. What are you doing?" "Sorry, I like it this way." Bailey Yun replied lazily. He didn't take her seriously at all. Bai Jinxiu was about to fly into a rage when Bailey Jing pulled her back and said gently, "Mommy, second brother is drunk. Don't be so calculative." Bailey Xiong frowned and said slowly, "Ah Yun just came back from America. Can't you be a little nicer?" Bai Jinxiu was furious. Young master didn't behave like a young master at all. He was like an uneducated person. She only reminded him a little. How did it become her fault? She was so angry that her hands were trembling. If Bailey Jing hadn't held her hand tightly and comforted her in a low voice, she would have quarreled with Bailey Xiong. "Mommy, don't be angry. I'll help you get the rice, okay?" Bai Jinxiu took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. She said stiffly, "Forget it. I'm full from anger. I'm not eating anymore." She moved her chair back and went downstairs with a cold face. Bailey Jing wanted to go upstairs to see her. Old Madam said indifferently, "Granddaughter-in-law, go up and see your mother-in-law." Xia Dong replied with an okay. She scooped a bowl of porridge and served the dishes that were left for Bailey Yun before going upstairs. After such a commotion, everyone's appetite was not very good. Only Bailey Yun ate with relish. The 3 little guys quickly finished their meal. Bailey Han also put down his chopsticks. The old lady said, "Ah Han, take the 3 little Bao Bei upstairs." After they left, only the old madam, Bailey Yun, Bailey Jing, and Bailey Xiong were left in the dining room. The old madam looked at Bailey Jing and said, "Xiao Jing, go upstairs and see your mommy." "Yes." Only now did Bailey Jing realize that her grandmother had deliberately sent them away. She probably had something to say to her second brother. The dining room was very quiet. Bailey Yun put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, and said indifferently, "Grandma, if you have something to say, just say it." The old madam's expression changed, and she said sternly, "Bailey Yun, you made a scene at the church today and made everyone laugh at our Bailey family. Do you still have any respect for this family?" Bailey Yun curled his lips mockingly. "Aren't you the same?" "Don't you have any respect for me, an illegitimate child?" What are you talking about?" The old madam was so angry that her chest was heaving violently. "Tell me, have we ever lacked your food and clothes all these years? What does Ahan have that you don't have?" Bailey Yun sneered. "Big brother is the eldest grandson and has the right to inherit the family. He can get whatever he wants. How can I compare to him? Moreover, I don't care for those things. So what if you satisfy my material needs? You have never cared for me like a family member." Bailey Xiong's expression changed, and he scolded sternly, "Ah Yun, what nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and apologize to your grandmother." The old madam was so angry that her whole body trembled. "Evil creature, haven't you done enough stupid things all these years? Which one of them didn't we clean up your mess behind your back?" Bailey Yun laughed mockingly. "That's only because you were afraid of losing face. You were afraid that I, an illegitimate child, would embarrass the entire family, so you had no choice but to help me deal with those troubles. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have left him alone when he was sick when he was young. Even Daddy, the only one who loved him, had to put away his care for him because of the old madam and Bai Jinxiu's expressions. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have sent him, who had just become an adult, to America and ignored him. If they really cared about him, they wouldn't have criticized and scolded him when he was depraved and addicted to drugs without a trace of comfort." The old madam was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. Bailey Xiong slammed his hand on the table. "Ah Yun, shut up. Is this how you treat your elders?" He originally wanted to let his son, who he doted on, say a few words to appease him so that this matter would be over. Who knew that he would go against the old madam so forcefully? It was simply outrageous. Bailey Yun lowered his eyes and laughed coldly. His laughter was filled with endless desolation. "If you don't love me, why did you give birth to me and raise me?" Bailey Xiong's body trembled. All the words of reproach were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit out a single word. The old madam's fingers trembled. Her lips moved, but she didn't say a word in the end. She paused for a moment before calming down. With a stern expression, she said, "From today onwards, Xia Dong is your sister-in-law. I don't care what thoughts you had in the past. From now on, you'd better put them away obediently." Bailey Yun's thin lips were tightly pursed. He didn't say a word. The strands of hair in front of his forehead covered his eyes and his cold gaze. The conversation ended on a sour note. Bailey Yun walked to the staircase on the second floor and happened to meet Xia Dong coming down from the third floor. Ever since they returned home, Xia Dong had been avoiding his gaze. She didn't dare to look into his eyes that were intertwined with anger and pain. Now that they had met on a narrow path, there was no way to avoid it. She squeezed out a smile. "You're back." Bailey Yun clenched his fists tightly. His voice was bone-chilling. "How could I not come back for your wedding with Big Brother?" She bit her lip and said softly, "I'm sorry." She was about to walk away. When she brushed past him, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. "You said that it's impossible between you and Bailey Han. Why did you marry him? Let go of me first." Xia Dong had already heard footsteps coming up the stairs. She struggled anxiously and said softly, "This isn't the place to talk. Let go of me first. Are you afraid that they'll see us like this?" "Ha ha ha," he laughed out loud, his laughter wild. She heard the footsteps become more hurried, but he didn't let go of her wrist. She was so anxious that her eyes were red. She said softly, "Fox, I beg you. Let go of me first, okay?" He stared coldly into her eyes. Her eyes gradually became misty. A figure appeared around the corner. He was 2 steps away from them. When he reached the last step, Bailey Yun let go of Xia Dong's wrist. "Ah Yun, what are you doing here?" Bailey Xiong stared at Bailey Yun and Xia Dong with an unfriendly expression. Xia Dong's eyes were filled with pleading. Bailey Yun said lightly, "What else can I do?" "Congratulate sister-in-law and big brother on their wedding." "Thank you." Xia Dong curled his lips and thanked him sincerely. He naturally understood what she was thanking him for. His gaze turned cold. He didn't look at her again and went upstairs. Seeing the suspicion in Bailey Xiong's eyes, Xia Dong smiled. "Daddy, Mommy's anger has subsided. Xiao Jing is accompanying her now." Bailey Xiong nodded. "You've worked hard too. Go back to your room and rest." When she finally returned to her room, Xia Dong was both physically and mentally exhausted. She leaned her back against the door and sighed. She had hurt Fox's heart so badly this time. He would never forgive her. And brother Shen. She was really happy to see him recover and that he was willing to attend the wedding. She hoped that he would forget about her soon and find his own happiness. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Bailey Han pushed the door open and walked out. When he saw Xia Dong leaning against the door in a daze, the corners of his lips curled up. He chuckled and said, "Honey, are you standing here to peek at me taking a shower?" Xia Dong was shocked. "No, you, hurry up and put on your clothes." What a hateful man. Why did he come out naked? She hadn't seen wrongly. He was completely naked. Bailey Han coughed. "I was thirsty, so I came out to get some water." He thought that his wife wouldn't come back for a while, so he came out naked. His hair was wet, and the water droplets slowly slid down his muscular chest, over his curvy waist, and then down his straight and slender legs. Although it was only a few glances, Xia Dong's cheeks were already red. Her heart couldn't help but pound. She suddenly closed her eyes and said anxiously, "Hurry up and put on your clothes." Seeing her shy reaction, Bailey Han's awkward mood was immediately relieved. He took a step forward and placed his hands behind her back. He leaned forward and almost stuck to her body. His tone was aggrieved. "Wifey, I've been taken advantage of by you." She closed her eyes tightly and covered her chest helplessly. I didn't see anything. I really didn't see anything. What a cute little woman." He chuckled. It was really fun to tease her. He pressed himself against her body and wrapped his arms around her waist. The water droplets on his body immediately spread to her body. She couldn't help but shiver. She blushed even harder. His eyes were full of smiles. He kissed her cheek and then kissed all the way to her ear. He whispered suggestively, "You really didn't see anything? We've been on the same bed for so long. You didn't see anything clearly?" No, I really didn't." She closed her eyes and shook her head frantically. She really didn't see the black and red thing between his legs. "Then I'm such a failure. I'll let you see it clearly tonight." His tone was serious, as if he was talking about the weather. Sob, "Let me go. I'm so tired today." Tears streamed down her face. He blocked her lips and kissed her gently. When she was panting and he was about to have a reaction, he released her lips and said hoarsely, "I know you're tired, so I'll let you go tonight." He suddenly bent down and picked her up. She was shocked and opened her eyes abruptly. She grabbed his arm hard. "Didn't you say you'll let me go? Why didn't you keep your word?" Sob. His good-looking eyebrows raised slightly and he smiled teasingly. "Wifey, you've misunderstood. I'm going to serve you as you take a bath." She was finally able to put down her worried heart. He carried her into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub. The warm water flowed down slowly. His slender fingers landed on the zipper on the back of her dress. He slowly pulled it and the perfect curve of her back gradually came into view. His eyes darkened and his hands slowly moved forward. She quickly pressed his hands down. "Hubby, I can take it off myself. You can go out first. Wifey, tonight is our wedding night. I'll serve you." This sentence sounded extremely ambiguous, and her face became even hotter. He stubbornly helped her take off her clothes. She had no choice but to cooperate and withdraw her arms from under the dress. His fingers moved gently on the back of her bra and the button came undone. She shyly arched her body forward and covered her chest with her hands. Bailey Hahn's fingers slowly slid along the curve of her back and extended to the front. He slowly opened his hand and covered her hands. His voice was bewitching. "Xia Xia, let me see." "No." Xia Dong blushed and shook her head, her shoulders trembling. She didn't dare to raise her head, afraid that she would meet his burning eyes. He didn't insist and retracted his hand. At this moment, the hot water had already covered her legs and was slowly spreading to her waist. He took a clean towel and after wetting it, he gently wiped her back. He knew that she was tired and deliberately made his movements gentle, afraid that he would hurt her. After he finished wiping her back, he even pinched her shoulders and massaged her for 15 minutes. She kept her eyes closed and felt the numbing sensation of the towel wiping her body. Her white jade-like toes curled nervously. When he massaged her, it was very comfortable and she couldn't help but relax her body. However, she didn't let down her guard and covered her hands tightly. The towel had already been moved from her back to her front. His voice was hoarse. "Let go of your hands. I'll wash it myself." She hugged her hands even tighter. "Be good." Her hands couldn't block the charming scenery at all. Her half-covered appearance made her even more seductive. His mouth was dry and his heart was burning with fire, but he could only try to suppress it. She still wanted to resist, but he didn't give her a chance. He covered the back of her hands with his hands again and rubbed them hard. She couldn't help but moan. Her delicate cheeks were so red that they were about to bleed. His voice was even more hoarse. "If you don't listen to me, I'll punish you." He rubbed them again with bad intentions, causing waves of numbness. She couldn't hold it in anymore and her shoulders twitched slightly. She couldn't help but loosen the strength of her hands. As a result, he had his hands all over her, splashing water everywhere. Although he had kept his promise and let her go at the last moment, she was still exhausted. She would never dare to take a bath with him again. That was simply torture without any light of day. He carried her back to the bed. She turned over and immediately fell asleep in his arms. He planted a tender kiss on her forehead and his handsome face looked even more charming with a smile. Now, whether it was legally or formally, she was his wife. Beauty novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 217. On Bailey Han and Xia Dong's wedding night, some people were happy while others were sad. Bai Lian changed into a sexy tight-fitting clothes, drove his flashy Lamborghini, and rushed into the nightclub, drunk and dreaming. On the huge stage, a group of scantily clad beauties were performing an erotic dance, but he turned a blind eye to it and poured hard liquor into his mouth like it didn't cost money. "Handsome, it's boring to be alone. I'll accompany you." A beauty wearing a low-cut, revealing short skirt rubbed against him. He squinted his eyes and smiled. He pulled the beauty onto his lap and ambiguously moved his lips to her ear. "Okay." The beauty stretched out her hands and wrapped them around his neck. Her pink peaks skillfully rubbed against his chest. Her voice was soft and seductive. "Handsome, let's go to the hotel." He smiled wickedly and suddenly picked her up. He strode out and threw her into the back seat of the car before getting in himself. "It's boring to go to the hotel. Why don't we do it here?" Ever since he fell in love with Xia Dong, he hadn't messed around with a woman for a long time. Since she didn't want him, why should he keep his virginity for her? "Okay, I've never tried that kind of thing in such an expensive car." The woman was like a snake as she climbed up his body. Her hands moved nimbly on his body. She stuck out her tongue and slowly licked his collarbone. When her head leaned against his abdomen, he suddenly grabbed her hair. Ouch! Ouch! The woman cried out in pain. He suddenly pushed her away and pulled up his pants. He coldly said, "Get lost." The woman angrily climbed up. "Are you crazy? You're crazy. Get lost right now." Bailey Yun opened the car door, grabbed her arm and threw her out. The woman was furious. She thought she had hooked a rich husband, but she didn't expect to meet a crazy person. He clearly had a reaction, but he suddenly asked her to stop. F***ck. She cursed at the Lamborghini for a long time. In the end, she still couldn't vent her anger. She picked up an empty can from the roadside and threw it at the car. The windows were tightly shut, and the soundproofing effect was very good. Bailey Yun leaned against the seat irritably and did not notice her little vengeful action at all. F***ck, he must be crazy. Why was his mind filled with that damned woman's face at this crucial moment? He had no way of mistaking that vulgar woman for her. He angrily and violently slammed his fist on the seat. Under the cold moonlight, two figures, one in front and one behind, stood on the roof of the building. The night wind blew, and the long hair of the figure behind him fluttered in the wind. She didn't care at all, and her eyes coldly stared ahead. Kacha, the sound of opening the can of beer exploded. Suzaku took a few quick steps. She was already standing in front of Mika Kito and said coldly, "You're injured. You can't drink. Get out of my way." Mika Kito's handsome face was expressionless. She sneered. "Mika Kito, don't forget what you promised me. You have to recuperate for 3 days. Don't do anything stupid." He said in a low voice, "Your condition doesn't include not being able to drink. You're being shameless. Are you still a man?" Suzaku was furious. Who did she offend? Why was a killer following a man around every day like a nanny? She was worried that he would lose his rationality and do something that would hurt her. His eyes narrowed, and they pierced into her skin like needles. He suddenly stretched out his long arm and held her slender waist. "Why don't you try it yourself and see if I'm a man? Let go. Don't force me to make a move." She grabbed his wrist. If it weren't for the fact that he was injured, she would have thrown him over her shoulder and thrown him out. He snorted coldly and threw away the can in his left hand. His left hand reached for her waist again. "Aren't you going to make a move? What are you waiting for?" She wanted to curse, but her cold face twitched. "What is this? Are you trying to force me to make a move? I won't let you get away with it." The vermilion bird coldly snorted, and her figure suddenly spun rapidly like a spinning top. Seeing that she was about to escape from his encirclement, Bei Tangshan's eyes flashed, and his long leg swept out, aiming for her waist. If it was in the past, the vermilion bird would definitely turn around and retreat, and then sweep back. However, her target was the injured Bei Tangshan, and she knew that he was deliberately angering her in order to force her to exchange blows with him. Thus, she wouldn't foolishly attack. She retreated step by step while he closed in on her. Unknowingly, they had already exchanged a few moves. She frowned. If this continued, there would be no end to it. The vermilion bird suddenly stopped moving as Bei Tangshan ruthlessly punched towards her chest. He didn't expect that she would suddenly stop moving and wanted to withdraw his move, but it was already too late. He abruptly shifted his fist to the side by 3 centimeters, and his fist brushed past her left shoulder as it slid past. Even so, he still hit her left shoulder with 70% of his strength. She could almost hear the sound of her arm breaking. Her face was cold as she said indifferently, "Go back. Don't let Uncle Hanzo worry." Suzaku turned around to leave. Her left arm shook uncontrollably. It was really broken. Mika Kito's eyes narrowed. He strode forward and grabbed her right arm. "Don't move. Your arm is broken." She turned back to look at him. Her eyes were calm as if she didn't feel pain at all. You're fine even though you're injured so badly. My small injury is nothing. He choked on her words. After 2 seconds of silence, he said coldly, "You're a woman. How can you compare yourself to me? I'm an assassin. Assassins don't discriminate between men and women." She suddenly curved her lips into a smile. Under the moonlight, there was a faint smile on her cold face. Her sexy red lips were as mesmerizing as a rose. Even her voice sounded warm. "Mika Kito, don't be so willful. Go back." He was stunned. His face darkened. He gritted his teeth and said, "Are you lecturing me?" She smiled and raised her eyebrows. "You're my boss. How would I dare to lecture you? I'm just saying what I think of you." She was actually so blunt. The veins on Mika Kito's forehead throbbed. He almost couldn't hold back his anger. But when he saw her left arm hanging by her side, he suppressed the anger in his heart. He said coldly, "Go back." She raised her eyebrows and followed behind him without a word. When they returned to the villa, the first thing Mika Kito did was to call Miyamoto Hanzo over to treat her broken left arm. During this time, he received a call from Japan. He went out to answer the call. After the call ended, he was about to push the door open when he heard Miyamoto Hanzo's voice. "Shao Kei, what happened to your injury? Don't tell me it was Shin who hit you." "Ah, Shin really did such a thing. I did it myself." Suzaku's voice was cold. "But there are red and swollen marks on your arm. These are clearly marks left by a fist." Miyamoto Hanzo's voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Was Shao Kei questioning his professionalism? "I stood still on purpose, so I got injured." Her voice was still indifferent. "Why? Do you have masochistic tendencies?" Suzaku's mouth twitched. "I don't have that kind of hobby." She couldn't say it out loud. She just didn't want to see him continue to go crazy. Perhaps only when she gave up resisting could he regain his rationality. "Then why is it? Could it be that you can't bear to see him get injured?" Miyamoto Hanzo was really gossipy. Suzaku's eyes flashed. She stared coldly at Miyamoto Hanzo. "Uncle Hanzo, you seem to be talking too much." "Hee, so I guessed it right." "Shao Kei, don't be shy. Uncle can understand your feelings of not wanting your lover to get hurt. Think about how I used to." With great difficulty, Hanzo Miyamoto finally found a topic that he could talk about. He kept talking, and the blue veins on Vermilion Bird's forehead popped out. This old man, how could he be so self-righteous? How could she bear to see Mika Kito get hurt? She was just keeping her promise. "That's right, that's it." Beitang Shen, who was standing at the door and inadvertently overheard their conversation, also had the veins on his forehead throbbing. Of course, he didn't believe Hanzo Miyamoto's words, but he was unhappy that Hanzo Miyamoto was making fun of him. Mika Kito purposely made a big noise when she opened the door to interrupt Miyamoto Hanzo's endless recollection. "Uncle Hanzo, how's Suzaku's injury?" "Huh? Oh, her injury? It's not a problem. She'll recover in 2 weeks." Uncle Hanzo slapped his forehead. He had almost forgotten his main purpose of coming here. He started nagging again. "I've put a splint on your left arm. You can't use force, and you can't fight with others." "I know. I'm not a 3-year-old kid." Suzaku was helpless. Uncle Hanzo chuckled. "Who knows if you're as stubborn as Shin? That's why I have to explain it clearly." Mika Kito's face darkened. Did he have to drag him into every conversation? Where was his dignity as the boss? Miyamoto Hanzo said with a smile, "Shen, since you're the one who caused Shao Kei's injury, you have to take responsibility and take good care of her. Do you understand? I'll leave first. You guys can have a chat." The little old man quickly packed up his things and happily closed the door. When the two of them couldn't see him, he stroked his chin proudly and muttered, "I'm so smart." Brother Tsuruchi, if Ashin's marriage is settled, you have to thank me properly. Mika Kito glanced at Suzaku's tightly bound left arm. His expression was a little stiff, and his tone was a little stiff. Stay in the villa tonight. If you need anything, ask Lu Xing to help you. He suddenly thought of something, and his expression became even stiffer. He coughed and said, "It's better to call a maid. If you want to bathe, she can help you." Suzaku's mouth twitched, and she said lightly, "I only have a fracture, not a disability. Moreover, my left arm is injured. My right arm is fine. I can do these things myself." She took her coat from the chair and casually draped it over her shoulders. "I'm going back to my own home. I'll ask Lu Xing to drive me. You should rest early." Mika Kito's brows furrowed, and there was a chill in his eyes. This woman, did she not understand what he was saying? "As the hall master, I order you to stay here tonight." She was speechless. "All right, you win." Childish man. Beauty novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 218. Late at night. The Su family was in a mess. Su Yunxian hadn't been heard from since she ran out of the church. Mrs. Su called her, but her phone was turned off. Although she was a little worried, she didn't think much about it. She thought that Su Yunxian wanted to be alone, so she turned off her phone. But at midnight, Su Yunxian still hadn't come home. Mrs. Su was anxious. Su Yunxian used to call her family when she didn't come home at night. But today, there was no news from her all day. Her family was wondering if she had an accident. Her eldest brother, Su Jinan, asked his friends to search for Su Yunxian's whereabouts in a city. Mrs. Su didn't care about anything else. She called Bailey Han and woke him up from his sleep. She told him that Su Yunxian was missing and asked him where he used to go with Su Yunxian so that they could search for her. Bailey Han frowned, thought for a while, and said a few names. Mrs. Su sobbed on the other side of the phone. "Han, sorry to trouble you. I won't disturb your rest. Auntie, please tell me if there's news about Yunxian." After ending the phone call, Bailey Han walked into the bedroom from the balcony. He was a little worried. Where would Yunxian go? Was it because he didn't give her any face at the church, so she took things too hard and did something stupid? He frowned deeply and sat on the bed. He didn't feel sleepy for a long time. He glanced at Xia Dong, who was sleeping soundly. He gritted his teeth, got up and changed his clothes. He bent down and kissed Xia Dong on the cheek. He whispered, "Honey, I'm going out. I'll be back soon." There was little traffic on the road at midnight. Occasionally, he would meet one or two drunkards or homeless people. Bailey Han drove to many places, almost all the places where they used to date, but still couldn't find her. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. He also felt guilty. If something really happened to her, it must have something to do with him. Bailey Han glanced at the time. It was already 5:00 in the morning. He turned the car around and set off on his way back. He had to get back before Xia Dong woke up. Bailey Han had been running around for half the night, and his coat was cold. After he entered the room, he immediately changed his clothes and hung them on the hanger. He walked softly to the bed. Fortunately, Xia Dong had not woken up yet. He quietly laid down beside her and covered himself with the blanket to warm himself up. Then, he reached out and gently hugged her waist. In her sleep, Xia Dong naturally leaned against his chest and even rubbed against it comfortably. A smile appeared in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. The worry in his heart was still there. After running around for half the night, he was also tired. With the warm and fragrant jade in his arms, he quickly fell asleep. It wasn't until a ray of dazzling sunlight shone through the window that he slowly opened his eyes. His arms were empty, and the spot beside him was cold. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He got out of bed, opened the glass door, and stood on the balcony to look down at the garden. He happened to see Xia Dong pushing old Master Yi in the garden to get some fresh air. Xia Dong pushed old Master Yi under the grape trellis and sat beside him. She opened the day's newspaper and softly read it for him. Although he probably couldn't understand it, she still read it very seriously. She had a warm smile on her face, and from time to time, she would give her thoughts after reading it. When Bailey Han walked to their side, he saw this scene. His heart softened. He gently held her shoulder from behind and said softly, "Honey, why are you up so early?" She turned to look at him with a smile on her face. "I just woke up earlier than you this morning." Because of her pregnancy, she was very sleepy. In the past, she used to wake up late every day. He smiled and rubbed his head against her hair. She patted the back of his hand. "Hubby, did you go out last night?" His eyes moved. "Why do you say that?" She smiled. "I woke up in the middle of the night and realized that you were gone. I waited for more than an hour, but you didn't come back. Unknowingly, I fell asleep again." He hugged her and asked sympathetically, "Did you cry this time?" She looked down shyly. "No, I knew that you wouldn't leave me behind." However, she was still very worried. She was worried that something might have happened to him. He couldn't help but kiss her face and said softly, "Honey, before I explain, you have to believe me. I don't have any other thoughts." "Okay, I believe you. You must have a reason." Her trust made him feel touched and warm. He explained calmly, "Last night, Mrs. Su called me and said that Su Yunxian was missing. I was worried that my actions yesterday had hurt her, so I drove out to look for her." Her beautiful brows furrowed slightly. "Su Yunxian is missing? Have you found her?" He said in a low voice, "Not yet." She tried to comfort him. "Hubby, don't worry. Maybe she just went to a friend's house or somewhere to relax." He looked into her eyes. "You're not angry with me?" She was amused. "What's there to be angry about? Do I look like a narrow-minded person?" She believed that he was feeling guilty and not because of anything else. His lips curved and his eyes were filled with love and adoration. He teased, "Of course not. My wife is so broad-minded that she can be a racetrack." She laughed. "I've only heard of people with broad-mindedness, but I've never heard of people with broad-mindedness. I've heard of it now. You're the first person in history." If Grandpa wasn't by his side, he would definitely pull her into his arms and be intimate with her. According to the plan, they would rest at home today and fly to Greece the next day for their honeymoon. However, because Su Yunxian was missing and Mrs. Su called to ask old Madame Han for help, old Madame Han discussed with the couple and decided to postpone their honeymoon until they found Su Yunxian's whereabouts. Bailey Han secretly mobilized the dragon gang to help find Su Yunxian. In the afternoon, Mrs. Su suddenly came to visit. Her eyes were red and swollen like peaches. When she saw old Madame Han, her tears fell and her body trembled. She couldn't even walk steadily. Bai Jinxiu quickly supported her. "Huilan, don't worry. Yunxian will be fine." Mrs. Su's tears fell even harder. Her lips trembled and she couldn't say a word for a long time. With Bai Jinxiu's help, she sat on the sofa and wiped her tears. With difficulty, she said, "Auntie, Jinxiu, Yunxian has been kidnapped." Bailey Han and Xia Dong were also present. When they heard this, their hearts tightened. Old Madame Han and Bai Jinxiu were shocked. "How did this happen? Did you call the police?" Mrs. Su sobbed and said, "The kidnapper said that we can't call the police. If we do, he will kill her immediately. He also sent us a CD. I'm here today for this CD." She took out a CD from her handbag. The old butler stepped forward and put the CD into the CD player. Soon, a picture appeared on the wall-mounted TV screen. It seemed to be an enclosed space with white walls on 3 sides. There was a chair in front of it. Su Yunxian's body was tied to the chair. Her hair was messy and her head was broken. Blood flowed from her forehead to her cheek, and there were clear fingerprints on the other side of her cheek. Just by looking at her appearance, it was obvious that she had been severely beaten by the kidnapper. Her eyes were filled with tears and her expression was full of fear. She held a piece of paper in her hand and read aloud in a trembling voice. "Daddy, Mommy, I'm fine now. But if you don't do as the kidnapper said, I will be hurt soon. The kidnapper said that we can't call the police. If we do, he will kill me immediately. He also said that if you don't meet his conditions, he will. Tears rolled down her face. She looked up and begged, "I beg you, let me go home. No matter how much money you want, my daddy will pay you." There was a clear click from the CD. Bailey Hahn could tell that it was the sound of a bullet being loaded. It should be the person who took the CD threatening Su Yunxian. Su Yunxian cried and shook her head. Don't shoot. I'll read it. He also said that if you don't meet his conditions, he will rape me." After reading this sentence, she was already sobbing. After almost a minute, she continued to read, "The kidnapper's conditions are that Bailey Han and Xia Dong get a divorce within 3 days. Then, he will hold a press conference in front of all the media to announce their divorce. He will also let the media film the divorce certificate because he wants to verify its authenticity. Then, he will let Xia Dong come and take me home. The kidnapper said that he has liked Xia Dong for a long time. It's a pity that she married Bailey Han." After reading this paragraph, Su Yunxian's face was already covered in tears. She screamed in front of her, "You lunatic, you like Xia Dong. Why are you targeting me? Why?" Click. The entire image suddenly disappeared and Su Yunxian's crying stopped abruptly. Everyone was dumbfounded. The kidnapper didn't kidnap Su Yunxian for money, but to force Bailey Han and Xia Dong to get a divorce. The kidnapper also said that he had liked Xia Dong for a long time. What was this? Could it be that the kidnapper's ultimate goal was to get Xia Dong? Mrs. Su cried uncontrollably. What should I do? My poor Yunxian. Bai Jinxiu had mixed feelings. She comforted her gently, "Huilan, don't be so agitated. We'll find a way." Xia Dong didn't know how to describe her feelings at this moment. It was extremely complicated. How could there be such a kidnapper? When did she have such a crazy suitor? Speaking of which, was it her who caused Su Yunxian to fall into this situation? Xia Dong couldn't hold back the worry and anxiety in her heart. Her entire body was cold and her shoulders couldn't help but tremble. Bailey Han reached out his right hand and held her cold hand tightly. She only felt slightly relieved when she felt his burning warmth. Mrs. Su cried and said, "What else can we do? We've already checked the source of the CD, but there are no clues. 3 days, how can we save Yunxian in just 3 days?" A powerful novel, Hongcha 866. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.